Due to deference of time, we have an aggressive agenda today, so we will get started. This is a continuation of the Committee on Public Safety to review two resolutions. Resolution number 230120 and 230121. Well, Mr. Cohen, will you please read the titles of the resolutions?
Resolution number 230120, authorizing the City Council Committee on Public Safety to hold public hearings to examine the open-air drug market and other barriers to clean, safe, crime-free streets in Kensington. Resolution number 230121, calling for the establishment of a Marshall Stabilization and Recovery Plan to combat the issues facing Kensington and the surrounding areas in Philadelphia.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. At this time, I'd like to recognize one of the authors of these resolutions, Member Ketsi Lozada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Check the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank all of you. I'd like to thank all of you for being with us today. I'd like to thank those of you who were here the first time today. I hope that we're going to be able to walk out of here understanding better what we are going to do from now, hopefully through the end of the year, what we're going to do different. I hope that everyone understands because I believe my office has reached out to each one of you who are testifying today, and that you understand that we're very clear about what each and every one of you do on a daily basis. We know what you're doing. Today's purpose is not for you to repeat that to us. We know that. We want to know what you're planning to do moving forward that is different from what you're currently doing that will help us change and improve the quality of life in the Kensington-Harrogate community. And I mean that with a lot of respect for the work that you all do. I'm not saying that what you're doing is not good enough. What I am saying is that it is not working. And we see that it's not working because we see the conditions of the neighborhood every day. And so while we're grateful for the work that you all do every day, we need you to do something different so that we can help improve the quality of life. And so I don't want to delay this any further. I think that I'd like to thank my colleague here, Councilman Harity, for always being a voice of the community that he also lives in. And Councilman Jones, who when I said I need Kensington to be a priority for you, that he immediately said yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Member. I will now recognize Mr. Harity, Member Harity, who also represents Kensington.
Hello, everyone, and thank you all for coming. As my colleague said, what's going on here in Kensington is atrocious, and what we've been doing has not worked. So we need to come up with new ideas and, work together, because this will never happen unless every department, every city agency, every elected official is working as a team in order to make not just Kensington, but the whole city a better place. I represent the whole city, and I say there's little Kensingtons all over the city, just not as crazy as it is here, but there's little spots in South Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, Northeast, Roxborough, where they go and congregate and get high. And, as not only a councilman, but as a resident, enough's enough. My residents, my neighbors are good people. They're just scared, and they should be able to come out of their house. The kids should be able to play. We should be able to have play streets and be able to not worry about drug dealers being on the corner and those play streets not being able to have the lunch program because of those drug dealers on the corner. How about we remove the drug dealers and give the kids something to eat? So thank you, and I look forward to working with every one of you on trying to make Kensington and the city of Philadelphia a safer, cleaner place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. I want to note for the record that we're back. I want to note for the record, because I heard some of the cynicism in the first hearings that this is a one-time dog and pony show. Not true. I want to note that this is after Election Day. They won. We're back. We're not going anywhere. We were having a robust conversation with some folk, and the issue was east of Market and what it would take in order to rejuvenate, whether you're for moving a stadium there or whether you're not. But they recognized that there were some fundamental problems dealing with safety. Some people were concerned about aggressive panhandling. Some were concerned about prostitution. Others were concerned about juvenile unrest at night and lawlessness that was in there. And I said to them, how can we be so concerned about this strip of land and not be as concerned about Kensington, about what goes on here every day? And so when we start to look at budgets, when we start to look at limited resources and where we apply those resources, we will not leave this neighborhood behind. So today, we don't want to be expert articulators of the problem, even though I watched somebody shoot up on my way here. Watch them shoot up. What we want from you tonight is recommendations on solutions. We want to say, if we were in charge, if you had a magic budget wand, whatever those resources you need to fix this, tell us what it is. And so we can talk about the problem that much, but we need to talk about solutions this much. And if we can do that, we will be able to communicate this to the 100th mayor of the city of Philadelphia and send them, him or her, a statement that until you fix this, we're not going anywhere. And we're going to keep shining the light on the problem until we shine a light on solution. And I want to thank my colleagues because I knew it existed, but until it bothers you as much as it bothers the people who have to deal with this every day, you don't feel it. It only takes a couple of times to come down here to see that we, as a city, have to do something about it. So I don't want to belabor the point. What I want to do is hear some articulation of what your area of expertise is, what your wheelhouse of information is, but go right straight at solutions that you can recommend to us to change the condition of Kensington. Mr. Cohen, will you please read the first panel to testify?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Noel Foysen, Director of the Opioid Response Unit. Also available for questions are representatives of the Managing Director's Office, the Department of Public Health, the Office of Community Services, the Philadelphia Police Department, the Department of License and Inspections, the Streets Department, the Office of Children and Families, the Department of Parks and Recreation, the Free Library of Philadelphia, the Department of Commerce, CLIP, and the Department of Behavioral Health, Intellectual Disability Services, and the Office of Homeless Services. If you could come to the front tables or sit in the front row if you represent any of those departments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we will begin.
Hi, everybody.
State your name always for the record, and please begin your testimony, but also your recommendations.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Chairperson Jones and members of City Council's Committee on Public Safety. I am Noel Foysen, Director of the Opioid Response Unit for the City of Philadelphia. I will provide testimony on behalf of the administration, joined by key leadership from the administration who will address any questions raised during public testimony. We submitted a longer version to City Council for the record. We thank the students, school staff, and residents who bravely shared their testimony with us in the previous hearing. We hear and acknowledge the hurt and suffering that has been felt by your community. A generation of children and their families have grown up witness to activities no child should be exposed to while going to school, playing in the park, or walking their neighborhood. We share your frustration and remain committed to improving the quality of life in Kensington until your community feels safe and set up to thrive. I want to thank the Committee on Public Safety for convening this series of hearings on public safety concerns in Kensington and Harrogate. We appreciate the partnership of Council Members Lozada and Squilla and their focus on seeking solutions through these convenings. In the past 2 years, we've met regularly with community leaders and residents and continue to be inspired by your insight, creativity, and tenacity to restore a safe and healthy environment for all residents in your community. Today, we continue this important dialogue, listen, and respond to your concerns. The testimony we provide tonight is in response to the priorities voiced by your community and offers key updates on the city's progress to support local schools and parks, increase public safety, and improve quality of life in Kensington. So the first update is around supporting the Kensington Plan. We are honored to support the Kensington Plan, a community-driven, trauma-informed planning process facilitated by the two anchor community organizations on the corridor, New Kensington Community Development Corporation, or NKCDC, and Impact Services. The Kensington Plan utilizes a collective impact framework and proposes strategic investments that address underlying physical, social, and economic conditions negatively impacting the health and prosperity of residents in Kensington. The Managing Director's Office is investing $7.5 million in funds from the National Opioid Settlement through the Kensington Master Planning process towards support to keep residents in their homes and improvements for parks and schools in the Kensington area. Recognizing the toll the opioid epidemic has had on local schools, the Managing Director's Office is investing $2 million from the National Opioid Settlement to help support the students and faculty in 6 public schools in the Kensington area: Jules E. Mastbaum High School, Russell H. Conwell Middle Magnet School, Francis E. Willard Elementary School, Lewis Elkin Elementary School, John H. Webster Elementary School, and Gloria Caceres Elementary School will each receive $333,333 towards site and security improvements for playgrounds, fencing, gates, camera installation, and prevention programming by December of 2023. The Managing Director's Office is investing $600,000 for the National Opioid Settlement to support 6 Kensington area parks. Each park will receive $100,000 towards programming, site improvements, and community building activities by the fall of 2023. NKCDC and Impact have begun a participatory decision-making process with residents in Harrogate Park, Hissey Playground, Hope Park, McPherson Square Park, Scanlon Recreation Center, and Trenton and Auburn Playground and Park. The next updates are around increasing public safety and narcotics enforcement. The city remains focused on increasing public safety and targeted narcotics enforcement in Kensington. In addition to increased redeployment in East Police Division and the Kensington Police District, the city works closely with law enforcement agencies, behavioral health providers, and city agencies to ensure a coordinated response to public safety concerns. In July of 2023, police conducted an intensive 3-day narcotics operation in East Division. The Narcotics Initiative utilized various resources of the police department and involved multiple state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies in partnership with city agencies. Police served 79 warrants and seized 29 guns, including 2 ghost guns. Police made 175 arrests and made 27 referrals to police-assisted diversion and issued 46 code violation notices. Police seized $1.4 million in narcotics street value and $77,000 in U.S. currency. As of July 11th, only 3 arrestees had charges dropped by the District Attorney's Office. In November of 2022, police launched the city's first behavioral health unit to provide a citywide co-responder model for vulnerable residents who encounter police. The BHU includes the Crisis Intervention Response Teams and Police-Assisted Diversion, or PAD. Crisis Intervention Response Teams, or CIRT, paid PPD Philadelphia Police Department officers with civilian mental health service providers to respond to residents experiencing mental health or emotional distress. Since November of 2022, CIRT teams have engaged 412 vulnerable residents, and only 2% of encounters required use of force by an officer, and less than 1% resulted in arrest. Police-assisted diversion is a joint operation between police, the Office of Criminal Justice, and civilian service providers, and aims to divert offenders away from the criminal justice system towards supportive, peer-based social services. In 2022, 1,388 individuals were diverted through police-assisted diversion at the point of arrest, and 2 of 3 PAD participants accepted the offer to enroll in treatment. There was a re-arrest rate of 8.5% among PAD participants in calendar year 22, a small percentage compared to the statewide recidivism rate of 65%. Most diversions take place in Kensington and involve arrests for retail theft, prostitution, and low-level drug charges. The Police Department and Parks and Recreation continue to enforce park regulations in Kensington. Park rangers patrol McPherson Square in Harrogate Park 5 days a week from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Additional ranger coverage is provided for McPherson on weekends. Park rangers and police enforce no camping and no drug use, while police enforce the curfew. Parks and Recreation placed boulders around the perimeter of McPherson last summer to restrict vehicle access. And then the third section of updates is around improving quality of life. To address quality of life concerns, the city is taking proactive measures to address the presence of mobile service providers, strengthen enforcement against illegal and dumping, and coordinate regular cleaning and sanitation in Kensington public spaces. We are aware that mobile service providers, some not funded by the City of Philadelphia, have been operating in the Kensington area. Through the Kensington planning efforts led by NKCDC and Impact Services, and with the support of council members Ketsi Lazada and Mark Squilla, MDO will help facilitate a process involving city agencies, community residents, and mobile service providers to identify and agree upon appropriate locations for services, consolidation of schedules to minimize duplication of efforts, and ensure sanitation is coordinated. Police, Streets Department, and Law Department meet regularly to streamline illegal dumping enforcement and maximize efforts. As of July 14th, 2023, the city has brought 14 legal actions in the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas for the city has brought 32 civil legal actions in the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. To date, this has resulted in judgments totaling over $72,000, $32,000 of recoup cleanup costs expended by the city, and $40,000 in fines. 6 additional cases are waiting trial, and 1 is pending a contempt petition hearing. Parks and Recreation, CLIP, and public health teams provide regular cleaning and sanitation support in Kensington area parks. In FY23, Parks and Recreation funded 2 additional operations crews. Public health supports environmental cleaning 5 days a week in Kensington and coordinates with CLIP and Parks and Rec to address problem areas. As of June 30th, the teams have removed 61,115 syringes through needle pickups, and Block to Block has removed 1,197 bags of trash. In addition, CLIP provides a sanitation support around McPherson Square Library 5 days a week and has cleaned 2,343 vacant lots and sanitized 1,671 blocks in Kensington through June 2023. I do want to add that today we did join a walk around with Councilmember Lazada, with the Police Department, Streets Department, and myself and NKCC and Impact, and there was an agreement to start a pilot we're trying to get to 24 hours a day pilot in a target area, and we can answer more questions on that in a second. There is more to be done to improve conditions in Kensington, and we are committed to working in partnership with community members. I'm joined today by leadership from within the Managing Director's Office, Health and Human Services, Community Services, Police Department, License and Inspections, Streets Department, Parks and Recreation, Commerce, CLIP, Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services, Office of Homeless Services, and Public Health. We are now available to answer your questions.
Well, thank you for that comprehensive testimony. I'd like to also recognize that we have officially established a quorum, and Member Kenyatta Johnson and Member Gutierrez. Thank you for being here. If I were to describe your role with all of the other components, subcomponents that are a part of this panel, you're the orchestra conductor for all of that kind of gets that to blend in to what the treatment plan for this area is?
Yeah, sure. Multi-conductor, I like that. That sounds very orchestral. So I'm the coordinating body, so I'm placed within the Managing Director's Office, and I work with all the operating departments to carry out their mission. And so we try to do it in a coordinated fashion. We're making sure that we're all working together. We have a single plan. I'm there to help them work through if there's issues where they're not getting enough resources or they need a certain department at the table. We convene regular strategy meetings with them. We have an action plan that we put out each year that has clearly identified roles and responsibilities for all the departments that are working in this space. But yet, I'm there as the coordinating piece. I'm there to make sure that we're minimizing duplication of effort, and a little bit of herding cats, I would say.
That is a Herculean task. But so we're here today to try to pull out of you, if you had the resources you need, what would be those resources? Is it a question of bringing things up to scale? Is it a question of coordination? What are tangible things that we can help you with? Because that's what type of hearing this is today, that if you could tap into unlimited resources and do the things you really wanted to do, what would be those things?
Yeah, I welcome that question. And so it's on a couple different fronts, right? And so today we had a great meeting that was focused specifically on quality of life and how we can coordinate those schedules of everybody, because we have multiple teams that are out there every day cleaning Kensington Avenue and the surrounding community. And depending on where you came today, you might not have even known that there's multiple teams that were out there today that were cleaning. And so I think one big piece of it is making sure that we have enough of the resources that we need. And so it's just more people that are able to do those things. Today, also on that walk around, I had a really good conversation with a couple of the police officers that were there, and some of them have been working in this beat for a while, for years, right? And they were talking about, my one officer said that, it felt more helpful during the Resilience Project. And I reminded him that I was like, hey, like I was actually around during that. But then I pointed out the difference between the Resilience Project and now is that we had shelter beds that came online like specifically to support that, right? And so there was a lot of encampment resolution that was going on that was tied directly to having placements available for people. So I'd say that's definitely something that would be really helpful in this space, is just having more housing opportunities. And there are ones that we're bringing online through the settlement, but we can always use more of those. And I think also just public safety, we know that we can't just magically create more police officers, but we desperately need more of that, specifically to carry out the enforcement plans that we've been talking about. There's just not enough people to fill all the roles that we need.
I will yield the mic to Member Lozada, and recognizing that Councilman Squilla is present.
Noel, thank you so much. We've had several conversations over the course of the last few weeks in preparation for today, but also in general. And so I want folks to understand a little bit about the work that is happening on the ground that causes chaos sometimes with the mobile units that we have providing services, much needed services in the neighborhood, but who oftentimes obstruct quality of life, right? Because we have a tendency to not coordinate those services or where those mobile services provide those resources to community residents. And oftentimes they're found in residential neighborhoods or in primarily residential neighborhoods. What can we do? What's the plan? I know we've met with community residents. Community residents have expressed their concern. How do we coordinate better those services that are much needed, but who oftentimes cause havoc in the neighborhood?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important question. It's something we take very seriously. We did just start a planning process with the community and the mobile providers and city departments specifically to address the quality of life concerns around mobile service provision. We had our first meeting last week. The city has a lot of homework that we need to do to come back to this space, specifically around what we're able to do in regards to enforcement, permitting and whatnot. I'd say there's sort of like 4 buckets of mobile service provision that we're seeing in the community right now. Meal service, which we saw a lot of today, medical services, donated goods, and I'd say like sanitation, sort of like showers and whatnot. And so as part of this planning process, there's a discussion with the community to figure out, like what are our standards? Like where, like personally, I think like we should not be offering services in front of a school or in front of a daycare center or like right at a transit station. And so figuring out like what are the best locations for those with the recognition that there are people that desperately need these services as well. And so we need to make sure that they're still accessible. So that's the community conversation that's part of the planning effort. Like they're gonna help us figure out exactly like what are the no-go areas, and then how can we work together to figure this out. There's also part of that planning effort is with the providers. So there are providers that we fund, and the ones that we fund, we're able to say, like, please don't set up in front of the daycare center. But those ones that we don't fund, right now there's not really a mechanism to have them come in line with us, and so we're hoping through this planning process we'll be able to do that, especially the homework piece that I was saying for the city part of the planning, like really figuring out like, are there tools that are available to us around enforcement that we're not using right now, and why are we not using them, and can we bring those online? Do we need more people? Those types of things. And so that's something, it just started last week. We're all committed to working on it together. August is supposed to be everybody's meeting in their groups individually doing stuff, and like I said, the city has a lot of homework to do in that space, but the whole group's coming back together in September.
How is community engaged in where these providers provide these services at? How are we reaching out to those residents that are directly impacted?
Yeah, and so there was some outreach done before the first meeting. There was discussions in that meeting about who else needs to be at the table, how can we get more people there. There were about 60 people at this first meeting, and so it was a nice turnout. And they did do an exercise where they had a map up on the wall, and they showed each person that was there, like put up a sticker, like where they're located. And there was good representation for where we see a lot of mobile provision, but not enough representation. And so I know that there's an effort to get more people. I know that they were going to be doing more targeted outreach specifically to all the civics and community-based organizations that we partner with to get more people to the table for that community conversation, because I think it is really important to have that voice at the table. Up until this point, the last time we had really concerted discussions with the community about placement of services, I would say was a couple years ago. It was specifically around when we had portable restrooms in the community as part of the Hep C response, and they had input then, but we haven't really done a large process like that since then.
About how many providers do we think we have that are providing mobile services?
Oh, does someone have that on the top of their heads? There's a lot. I can share the list of those that have agreed to come to the meeting. We did include. It was not limited just to mobile providers. We also had like brick and mortar providers, and health systems were there too, because we are trying to do a real like holistic look at the provision of services. And so Esperanza Health Center was there, Episcopal was there, Temple was there. We are trying to get everybody at the table. Thank you very much. There are 20-ish mobile providers that came to the table. I'll get you a more official number than 20-ish.
20 what?
Like around 20.
Yeah.
And we have started, part of that planning effort is getting a schedule of where they are right now, but we're trying to be very clear that the city hasn't like approved the schedule. This is just sort of like where you're providing services now and what days you're out there now, and then through this process, providing a way of like approving the schedule. But right now, we do have a good sense of like where folks are that have a regular schedule and what services they are providing, and I can share that with the committee.
And within those 20 providers, how much money does that represent?
Most of them are not providers that we are funding, and so most of them are providers that do not have city contracts. There's a couple that are part of that list, but majority of them are like smaller groups.
Okay. And how many of them are services that overlap?
I would say there's definitely some overlap of services. There's not been, because it has not been coordinated by the city, there has not been an analysis done of sort of like what scale we need each service, and so there is quite a lot of overlap, I would say.
Okay. I'm going to ask that we work and we make it a priority to work with community residents who are directly impacted by the services that the mobile units are doing in the neighborhood. And that is because I don't think a day goes by that I don't receive a complaint from a community resident, a community group, regarding services, like I said, that are desperately needed in the neighborhood, but that make residential blocks difficult to live in, and whose children are oftentimes impacted because we draw services off of the commercial corridor and into the neighborhood. And so, I think that we have plenty of community groups in every part of Kensington, Harrogate, as we kind of work our way out. There are many, many groups who bring community residents together and who should be a part of the conversation regarding where these mobile providers should be set up. I also think that if their services overlap, they don't have to all be here on the same day at the same time, right, providing the same services. And you and I have had a conversation about, and the police department, thank you to Chief McCarrick, we never had a accurate number of how many people we're serving, right? And so if we can tell that the number is higher in the summer, then let's figure out how we spread these mobile providers out that are providing the same services into different parts of the neighborhood, so they're not concentrated in one specific area. I'm going to continue to say that My priority over the next few months is to break up concentration in the Kensington-Harrogate community, and I want your help. I need everyone's help to be able to get this done, while understanding that sometimes folks are not going to go in to get the necessary services, and the mobile units are really important, but we can't have them continuing to affect, negatively impact community of life in those residential areas. Thank you.
Before you, and I remember Goodyear is next, help me to understand, did I understand you to say that one of the recommendations should be that there should be a disbursement of some of those services to various parts of the neighborhoods?
Yes, there should be a disbursement of services to different parts of the neighborhood, especially if they overlap, and they should not be in residential neighborhoods. We have Lehigh Avenue, we have Kensington Avenue, we have Aramingo Avenue. We have a lot of wide spaces that are less than 80% residential where some of these services can be drawn to, right? And that would not impact directly children and families. And so, again, I want to recognize that these services are necessary. They just can't be in the same place all at the same time.
And there you go. Did I understand you to say that the planning discussion and process is just beginning with community stakeholders?
So just specifically on this project, specifically on the siting of mobile services, yes, but there's always been planning discussions with the community going on, but this one specifically is really intentionally focused exactly on what Councilmember Lozada was asking us to focus on. And so what is the appropriate location for these mobile services that are needed, but where can we place them where people can still access them, but creates the least harm for the community? And so that's the piece that's starting, and it came directly from a lot of the advocacy from the community and from those on council as well.
And thirdly, did I understand you to say that most of the payment to these social service organizations you're like a pass-through? It's state money or federal money or grant money? It's not from the city's budget?
Yeah, so I don't want to, since I'm on the record, I want to make sure that I get back to you on that piece specifically. And so I'll provide a list of the providers that we know are providing mobile services that are attending this planning effort, and what percentage of them, that the city is providing them payment for.
And in addition, can you respond to Member Lozada's census count of who's being serviced? Is there a way that we can find out that number on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis?
Yeah, I think that's something that we can work together on to get that. There are various outreach and engagement teams out there that do keep a census of who they're dealing with. There is the point in time count that happens every year, and so that's one of our data points that we look at. But I think that's definitely something that we can, between our teams, come up with a number, because there is a weekly count that happens, which I know the council members are aware of, but that's not necessarily counting individuals who are homeless. It's more counting activity on the street at 3 o'clock in the morning, which there is a lot of, unfortunately.
Are these mobile units permitted units, so they have permits for the services that they're providing?
And so that's the piece that we're looking into. And so there are the city providers. So for example, wound care, the wound care van that's out there that the city is funding, that we have the contract with them to provide this service. They are permitted and licensed to provide that service. What we're looking into is, do other providers need to have that level of licensure to be providing these medical services, specifically because of the level of medical care that's required as a result of xylazine in the drug supply? And so we want to make sure that if there are providers out there that are providing medical services, that they have the correct licenses. And so that's what we're looking into with the law department right now.
What happens to mobile units that show up in our community that are not working directly with the city of Philadelphia, who don't have permits, who are these community do-gooders, and who don't follow any of the rules? What happens with them? Who is responsible for enforcing them, removing them?
Yeah, so
addressing them?
So depending on what service they're providing in the community, there's different answers around the enforcement piece. And so, for example, meal provision, every provider that's serving meals is required to get a permit from the health department. And they have to go through a Serve Safe course, but it's not necessarily, the permit's not necessarily providing approval to provide the service at a specific location. And that's a piece that the city is trying to figure out, like, how can we do a better job around permitting tied to locations? For donated goods, there's no ability to enforce around that right now. We've looked into it with LNI and the law department. If they were selling the goods, then then it's considered vending, and then there's enforcement around that. But someone who's pulling up and just donating goods, there's really not anything we can do specifically around that. That's not to say that the police department doesn't ask people to stop or just sort of explain like what's going on, like, hey, you're dropping off all this stuff in the middle of a park where kids are going to be. Do you think that's a good idea? There's a lot of those kinds of conversations with providers, but from a enforcement piece, like that's part of this planning effort. That's part of us like really coming back to the community with really clear answers, like this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. And I think we haven't finished our research yet, but I do anticipate that there'll probably be a request for support on legislation around that piece.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Member Goodyear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. I wanted to start by commending you for the depth and the breadth of work that you're doing with the opioid response unit. It's just an incredible amount of work. And, you know, as Councilmember Jones said, you're also like leading the orchestra, right? So I think that's commendable. I have a related question about community engagement and community touch points. I know that even when we're doing a ton of work, there can be a mismatch between what the city is delivering and what people in communities actually need, or people in communities getting a particular service in the way that they need it or where they need it. When we were here the first time a couple of months ago, we heard a lot of requests from the community. A lot of it was basic quality of life services. And so that has me wondering, what are our touch points, right? I would want to see in a crisis situation that we have clear, transparent, and very frequent communication with people who are impacted about what it is that we're doing, how that's working, what might need to be tweaked and changed. So I wanted to hear a little bit about those touch points and how the orchestra is getting feedback from the people who actually live in the community, as well as a lot of folks that are out here trying to do service provision. What do those touch points look like, and how frequently do they happen?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I actually take that piece really importantly because I think, especially with the city's response around this piece, I think the community often voices that they have felt sort of left behind and that all of our services are not focused on them. And so that's definitely, I have 4 strategies for my plan, and one is just focus on the community for community support to make sure that we're really intentional around that. How we get that, and so we work really closely with the civic leaders and CDC leaders, and so that's been our way of doing it. What I like about this Kensington Plan effort that NKCDC and Impact are pulling together is that it's getting more voices to the table, which I think is really important. And just through a couple of the meetings I've been in, and just hearing additional perspective on things, and also just the level of empathy from these community residents, like the stuff that they're experiencing, like it would be okay if they didn't have as much empathy as they had, right? But they really do, and they always have such great perspective on things that we're doing, and they call us out on stuff when it's not working, and so I really appreciate that feedback. And so to answer your question more directly, I'd say initially we had sort of been working with the leadership of the groups, but now we're trying to figure out like what does that look like to have more voices at the table, to make sure that we're part of this like larger planning effort, to make sure that we're bringing that information back. And I will say, I do have to give a shout out to all the departments in this room, because while I'm sort of the conductor, like they're the ones that have to actually do the work, right? And so they're the ones that should get credit where credit's due for things that are working,
Absolutely,
and help support and stuff. And so like I couldn't do any of my work without all the people that are sitting behind me. So.
Absolutely, thank you. And I didn't mean to leave out all of our folks at agencies that are carrying out this incredible work. I respect CDCs, civics. You know, I come from that world prior to council. I do think that there's a difference between sort of engagement that involves community leaders and engagement that's for everybody. I would want to see in a situation like this, you know, what if we had a standing meeting or a standing engagement that people who live here can come and hear about what the city is doing and comment on how that's working for them? I think, you know, if we're working around the clock on this issue here in Kensington, and people here don't know what we're doing or don't feel like they're being noticed by the city, that's a problem, right? And so a piece of that is engagement. And I don't think that we can just lean on a specific core group. I think that there has to be a venue for people who live in this neighborhood to understand on a consistent basis what's happening and to give feedback on that. So I would encourage us to develop more of a concrete strategy around broad engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Are you, all right. Before we go to Member Harity, recommendations, and I want our scribe writing them down. There was a question of distribution of resources that we need answered. The question I always ask is, how many and how much did it cost? How many people did we serve? How much did it cost? And so that whether it's our city dollars, state dollars, federal, we have to be accountable. If it ain't measured, it ain't managed. And I went to public school, forgive me. But we need to have those answers to those questions so that we know that this is working, they're reaching a lot of people, we're getting positive or negative feedback, but we have to memorialize that as the orchestra conductor. With that, Member Harity.
Leading me right in there, Madam Conductor, since you like that title, and you know, my question's fairly simple. You heard us up here when we started, our Chairman Jones, District Councilperson Lozada, and myself say that what's been going on is not working. Since you're the conductor, I'd like to just know if, A, you agree with that statement, and if so, give me one example of something that isn't working that you plan on changing. And then I'll have another question after that.
Okay. And so it's not that I think that things aren't working. I think that things are not at the scale that they would need to be at. And so a great example is just around the quality of life. There's 6 different teams that are out there every day cleaning. It does not feel like that to the community. That's not the experience that the community is having. That's not the experience that they're seeing. But there is a lot of cleaning activity that's happening. And I think about the residents and what they're experiencing, but then also the workers on those crews and just how demoralizing that is for them to, you know, they're cleaning up illegal dumping spots and then they're dumped again, like on the same day. And so I think that's a great example of we have a lot of activity happening in this space. We have multiple teams that are doing this work in this space, but yet we're still not making a difference. And so, Councilmember Lozada walked us through a plan today of can we look at, so we have all this activity, is it that it's not the right schedule? Are we not doing it at the right time? Is it, do we not have the right equipment? And so just trying to do that analysis of what we're doing and see if we're able to get to scale with the current resources we have, or does it require a resource request to get more? And I just think that's like a really good example of just sort of the scale that we're at.
So you're not actually saying that you think things are not going well here. You seem to think that things are here, and
I want to make sure that it's clear, like
being from the community, what you're doing is not helping, not working, and not in the slightest bit appeasing the residents of this area. You know, Madam Conductor, as you say, it comes all down to your coordination. And, you know, I just would like to see some better coordination and maybe some more feedback and maybe some more community groups. I don't know if my wife Marnie, have you gotten any information from them, from KICA, to Kensington Independent Civic Group? People that are actually in the neighborhood? Another thing, has my district council person hinted to, these people that are down there giving out food and trying to service these people without their permits and doing it illegally, are creating a lot of that trash that they're having to come out and pick back up again. You'll see them pull up with a van at Kensington Avenue, and they sit there and they give out fruit and they give out food, and then they leave all their crap sitting there. The residents are tired, and listen, I've been a city employee, I was a staffer for almost 30 years off and on. I've done almost every job possible, including working in the managing director's office with the NTI program. So I know it can be done, because we did it already. We did clean up this area. Not going to mention any names, but some other people came in and let it all go to hell again. But I know it can happen because it has happened. And for me, it all starts with you, Madam Conductor, being a good conductor and leading this symphony of departments that you have under you, and the electeds in the room that are also coordinating. You know, no disrespect, but if I got to pick somebody that's on my list, you're on my list, because I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling it. I've been here for a minute now complaining, and I haven't seen no difference in what my neighbors have to deal with, what our children have to deal with. So, and you know, I'll give it a break on that, because, you know, I'm just a little emotional kind of guy. It's the Irish in me. But I have some honest questions. So here, Council, this budget session, we allocated $10 million for signing bonuses for first responders and hard-to-fill positions such as building inspectors, which we need drastically too, as well as police and paramedics. The idea was to compete with New York, Miami, and Washington, D.C., who are all giving $20,000 signing bonuses to recruit cops. I've talked about it before. There was a billboard on 95 saying, be a Miami police officer, live on the beach, $20,000 signing bonus, $79,000 to start. Now, I get the cost of living's a little more down there, but, you know, we pay our officers peanuts and expect them to lay their lives on the line every day. And I just want to make sure that the managing director's office and you guys in that field are going to actually spend the money where it's supposed to be. And so my real question is, there's $3 million that we allocated for recruitment. Is there any plan on how we could actually advertise and get an actual recruitment thing, like be all you can be, join the Army? You know what I'm saying? We need to be out there promoting and, quite frankly, showing them that we damn support them, you know, so.
If I could begin to respond, and the police commissioners here and Deputy Commissioner Don.
Could they come up to the mic, state their name, and respond to the question, please?
Thank you, Councilman. Trying to make sure I'm close enough to the mic. My name is Eva Gladstein, First Deputy Managing Director. I want to do two things. With regard to the first question, Councilman Harity, I want to make sure the record is clear that I do not believe Noel Foysen, the director of our overdose response unit, said we are satisfied with what's happening. We understand, and I think she expressed our dissatisfaction, but what she talked about was one example where we could improve by scaling up certain activities. And we'll continue to talk throughout the evening about ways we can improve what we're doing and see better results. With regard to your second question about police recruitment, there was $1 million that was received through, thank you to City Council, through a mid-year transfer ordinance, and that was fully spent within maybe 2 months on, and you might have seen SEPTA advertising, a lot of social media, and some billboards. And to your point, Councilman Harity, even though we had very little time, we did make sure that there were billboards that were on I-95 towards, at least towards other communities where we could recruit. Now there is $3 million available. We have begun to meet to plan that, the expenditure of those funds based upon what we have learned from the $1 million. I personally was in the last meeting on that. Of course, we didn't actually have the ability to use the money until July 1st, but we're working on that with great speed and understand the need for it. And I'll turn it over to.
Okay, so just
Pull your
one-
mic closer.
Just, sorry, one more follow-up question, just along the same lines. Are we going to be doing any kind of ads of recruitment to get more people that look like the neighborhood actually policing the neighborhood? I know we've been doing pretty good with it, but I believe we need to be targeting certain neighborhoods, like Kensington, for instance, you know, and there are good people here, and you know, we need to let them know that there is a spot for them on the police department, and you know, if they're willing to work at it, then we're willing to work with them. And I'd like to know what you're going to do to kind of bring neighborhood policing more equal and look more like the neighborhoods they're serving.
I think the answer is absolutely yes. We're looking at trying to analyze how people who responded to this, which I think is still open right now, open till the 16th, just close, and then targeting the recruitment going forward. We did ask people how they heard about the campaign and who they heard it from, et cetera, and we'll be using that data for the next set of resources for that matter. And
So since you brought that up, I did see that you are offering a bonus now of $2,000. With the $10 million we put over there, I'm hoping that is going to go up because to put your life on the line, $2,000 really isn't going to cut it.
And are we getting responses? State your name for the record, although I know who you are.
User error. Good evening.
There we go.
Thank you, Danielle Outlaw, Police Commissioner. We're still actually gathering the data from this campaign that just ended on the 16th. We look at that as a good opportunity to not only treat it as a pilot project, but to really see how impactful it was. To circle back, yes, we did make sure that we hit all areas, not just to ensure diversity in, you know, the things that we can't change, but to make sure that we reach all people from all walks of life, maybe previous experience, school teachers, social workers, you name it. So I think once we're able to take a look at the number of applications that we received, who actually responded based off of the marketing campaign that rolled out, we'll be able to have more solidified answers and we'll be able to circle back to you.
Member Harry.
The only other question I would ask is, are you doing any kind of, like, let's say pre-research or pre-reaching out, trying to grab some of these kids in the schools, maybe reaching out to some of these colleges, to some of these kids that are in there that, you know?
The answer is yes to that, including Lincoln and Cheney. I think the one, we've talked about this upon my arrival here, we have to build a pipeline, right? And we're also competing not just with other law enforcement agencies, but with other just businesses in the private sector who offer the ability to work from home and pay more money, so on and so forth. And the military is actually even having recruiting issues now. as well. So it's not just us. So I think the points that you make are valid in that we have to present ourselves and market ourselves in a relatable way, but then also develop a pipeline simultaneously. So yes, we are doing that, and we also recognize that, officers, not, it might be white shirts, but our police officers that are on the ground are some of the best recruiters as well. So it's not just, I think, it shouldn't just be us looking at incentivizing those who want to come. We should also maybe be looking at those officers who bring others in to incent them as a bonus for bringing someone in that successfully passes
Now we're
through
thinking
the
out of the
entire
box.
process, and then it
That's
comes on
something
the
that I like. They do it all over the place in all kinds of businesses. You get a little bit of a bonus if you bring somebody in. They last longer than so many months. In our case, past the academy or something like that. And that is a great idea. And anything we can do to get the word of mouth out there and to make it like it was a good job with good people just trying to protect and serve and get home to their families. And
Yes, sir.
So before I recognize Member Johnson, and you can fill two books with what I don't know about tactics in law enforcement. However, what I would question, is it a question of more officers or a slight change in policy about what is acceptable behavior in a neighborhood and what is offensive, actionable, law enforcement actionable issues in a neighborhood? And is Kensington like an outlier, unique, that we've drawn a circle around, said, well, this is where things are tolerated? And I don't mean people shooting up, which I mentioned on the record, I saw somebody doing it. And I guess we can argue that is a
Welcome to my
question of
world.
treatment. I get that part. But I met a business person on the way in the door who said that he can't open his store because people are stealing in ways that doesn't create a good business model to stay open. And so I understand over-policing, I understand. Is there a sea shift of change that needs to happen that says that for you to walk in and take goods off the shelf is not acceptable? And so whether we have more police on the streets in that situation or less, would that change the dynamic here? And I know that's a tricky question, but answer it in a way that would be recommended to us to be helpful to you.
I think the answer is both, right? So whatever the strategy is, you're going to need the personnel to enforce whatever it is. The biggest thing is we're the entryway. We're the gatekeepers into the criminal justice system, right? So we make an arrest. There's a large ecosystem that's beyond the police once we make the arrest, beyond the DA's office, beyond, and so forth. We all have to be on the same page as to what we're prioritizing. So if we say, look, today, or wherever, citywide, it's not okay to do whatever it is we're talking about, everybody needs to be in agreement that it's not okay to do this. Because my folks are out here day in and day out. We can do narcotic sweeps, we can do whatever it is, and we can make the arrests. We have the tables, we show the guns, we show the drugs, we do all of this. But if somewhere later down the road it falls apart because it's not prioritized in the same way, and I'm not talking about any one particular entity at this time, we have to make sure that we're focusing on the back end, right? So when we come in, what are we doing to sustain the efforts, right? Because we can't have police on the corner 24/7. But what are we doing to make sure that if this person is going to be out of custody, that there's something to sustain that enforcement effort and to make sure that they're not revisiting, right? And we heard about the recidivism rates earlier. But everybody in the room has a part. We've all been working together, but I think to the point is, if it's brought up to scale and we all share that same prioritization, I think we'll see what we're trying to see. But right now, we enforce what we're being told to enforce.
Got it. Chair recognizes.
Who's
You're not about to
like who's telling what to enforce? Is it the mayor? Who is it?
All right, we're going. Thank you, Member Harity. We're going to point to solutions.
I didn't.
And this is what we're here for today.
Right.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we're here for today, because we have to get to the point where we stop being so correct, right? At some point, everyone in this room has to realize that we have failed this community as a result of people not wanting to say, this is the person who said I should not do it, or this is the person that says I have to stop doing it, or I can't do it. That has to end. I'm going to use an example. Before you respond, I'm going to use an example. We had new tents going up. Somehow or another, opioid dollars got distributed, got dispersed. We started to see all of these community groups got funded. We start to see new tents popping up everywhere. We ask police and get rid of these tents. They've not been up for 72 hours. We need to get rid of them immediately. They start to do the work and then get told by somebody, stand down. Why? Why?
So here's the answer to that. This is the very real answer to that. There isn't a somebody. What we see, we're human beings. So if we make an arrest and we see that this person is back out on the street, after so many arrests and so many returns back on the street, human beings are going to shut down and say, well, you know what, maybe this isn't the way I'm supposed to be doing it. There's not a direction coming from the sky saying, all right, you are not to do this, you are not to do that, right, as it relates to certain things. The laws are what they are. We enforce the laws. Now, we have been told, when it comes to certain things with using drugs on the street or, open air drug use, and there are people behind me that can attest to this that deal with this every day, that we do have parameters. There are certain things that we need to do in order to test drugs and make sure that they're drugs before we make this arrest, so on and so forth, right? So it's not, again, this isn't a pointing of fingers, but I think folks have to be very clear. When we say we're prioritizing, when I say I'm going out, my people are going out and they're doing a sweep, that's because we prioritize open air drug use, we prioritize guns, we prioritize all the illegal things that you see. So that means that the expectation is that later on down the road, as it goes through the pipeline, that everyone else shares the same priority and there's consequences for that. That's just there's not a voice coming from the sky saying that this isn't going to happen, this isn't going to, or this not, this is going to happen. It's when we see these people back out, we all walk away and we figure, well, I guess, but we're going to keep at it. So it is important to have us in this room, but, I think some of the other folks in this room need to answer some of these questions too. So
I'm going to hold that. Going to let patient Mr. Member Johnson get his point of information.
I just wanted a point of information.
Put that mic on.
It's on red. 1, 2.
Pull it up a little bit.
1, 2.
Yes, you're next.
1, 2. Nope. 1, 2. 1, 2.
There you go.
1, 2. I just wanted a point of information before I ask my own questions regarding, and it goes along the lines of what the chairman talked about regarding businesses in this community and the threshold of how much you can steal and get away with, right? So can you clarify the actual policy? And I know going pre-pandemic, I think we kind of relaxed, like going after individuals, going inside stores, but I think we just lost a Wawa, we lost businesses along the commercial corridor. So I'm just trying to get clarity on that actual policy, because that may be something that we have to examine and take a look at as we move forward.
Good evening, Council. My name is Frank Benoit. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Investigations. So our policy as far as what we do has never changed. If we're called and we arrive and we're told someone's stolen something from the business, we arrest them. And we follow the state statute. Now, all that does is it goes in and it gets processed. What happens after that is at our control. So, the state statute's pretty clear. First arrest could be a summary if it's under $150. Once it advances, that goes up into the misdemeanors and could even advance into a felony if it's done a third time. So that's all done once they verify fingerprints and things come back through our record system.
Have you seen an increase in this particular area in calls from businesses regarding individuals going inside stores every day stealing?
I could look at that. I could do a little analysis. We have been doing a project in Center City, really looking because they were one of the high areas in the city for retail theft. And we've really increased our communication with the DA's office, with the businesses, in getting the prolific people identified and removed out of the game. We're moving that into South Philadelphia now, and we're starting to work with the same businesses because a lot of them are shared. We did a little bit in the Northeast, but I will definitely start to look at this area and do the same thing.
Look at this area?
Well, we're policing it.
I got no stores, no
Right.
stores. No disrespect, and I apologize. I'm a very respectful guy to police, and you can see that. But please, don't blow smoke, as they would say. You understand? We need something to happen, and we need it to happen now. I'm out on the street every day. I talk to these business people. They say they call, they're told that they can't do nothing about it because they're not going to come out. All we're trying to get to a thing is where is the breakdown? Where is the lapse? What can we do to fix that lapse? That's what we need. That's what we want. How do we support you in doing your job of taking these people off our streets that are terrorizing our neighborhoods and our neighbors, dude?
Why are we starting?
Listen,
Yeah, why are we starting now?
when I
Come
say
on,
start,
man.
let me clarify what I said. We're working in the same way we've always have. When we get called, we make an arrest. When I say look at it, I'm talking about analytics. How can we do it better? How could we zero in on the people that are terrorizing the businesses? And that's what they're doing in Center City.
Too little, too late.
So
We
if I,
lost all our businesses.
if I could, I'm going to recognize Member Squilla, who also represents this neighborhood. Oh, what do we?
Yeah, I never asked the question.
I'll go back to Member Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief. That was part of my point of information, and I want to thank the District Council Member Ketsi Lozada for leading the charge and with a more reinvigorated and passion around and wrapping our arms around this issue collectively. I just want to get an idea from Ms. Noel. One, when did the Kensington plan begin? Two, what is the metrics that are being used, right, and the goals that you are focusing on, and how you're measuring success in this particular area that makes the Kensington plan that you're working on different than any other plan that we're working on across the city of Philadelphia. And then last but not least, what I believe is the most important part of the question is, how often are yourself and the other agencies, are y'all meeting weekly, right, quarterbacking and addressing this issue? Because that will reflect if there's a sense of urgency in addressing this issue. And we recognize as leaders in government, we can come together when something is important. We just saw with I-95, certain businesses along the corridor, we want to make sure commerce flow up and down I-95, but nevertheless, it showed that we can come together and be successful. But that issue is all about money. This is about primarily black and brown people, right, and people of color, right, that live inside this community, right? And so what is the sense of urgency in terms of how we address the issues of Kensington? And so I want to get an idea of when did y'all start, how you're measuring success in terms of how you're going to be moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I'll start with your third question first. We meet specifically on Kensington
I'm
City
sorry,
Department.
state your name again for the record,
Oh.
for the stenographer.
Oh, sure. Noelle Foysen, Director of the Opioid Response Unit, Managing Director's Office. Specifically on Kensington, we meet weekly. City Department leadership is meeting weekly on Kensington. On public safety, we have a every Friday weekly meeting specifically on Kensington Public Safety. At that public safety meeting is the Philadelphia Police Department, District Attorney's Office, SEPTA, the school district, Town Watch, Office of Criminal Justice. I'm probably missing some people, but so specifically in public safety, we're meeting weekly on that, and we will definitely be taking things back from this hearing back to that meeting and seeing how we can operationalize the things that have risen up today around that space. You asked about the Kensington plan. I want to be clear, the Kensington plan is not my plan. It's not a plan that the city's owning at all, and the plan hasn't, it's in the process of starting, and so there's not a plan that's been written, it's not documented, it's not, they are starting from a point where they looked at, they each had a plan already, so they did an analysis of that plan, they looked at where they overlapped, and now they're launching the planning process. So the planning process is being started now. The city is participating in the plan, where we're making sure that we're bringing resources and supporting it. The first two efforts that they were taking up as part of the planning process was looking at the parks and the schools.
Just real quick for clarification, so the Kensington plan is a plan that's just being started.
Yeah, and
So what's the city of Philadelphia's plan? Is that similar to the opioid response team that, okay, can you provide clarity around the operations of the opioid response team specifically for the Kensington
yes.
area?
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to clear that up. The Kensington plan is a community-led plan.
And I'm just
in the
going
process
off of
starting. Yeah.
your testimony said, hey,
Yeah.
join the Kensington plan, so it gives the impression it's city-led.
Yeah, that's because I want to make sure that people know about it, because they're still trying to get additional voices at the table, and I try to promote it as much as possible, but it's definitely not, I'm not leading this planning effort, I'm just part of it. Separately, the opioid response unit, we have an action plan that we put together every year, specifically in 4 areas around prevention, treatment, public safety, and community support. There's multiple action items that departments are assigned and that we're working on. Each year we update it, and so we're constantly, there's multiple metrics that we're tracking on those. I'm happy to share the plan.
Yeah, can you provide a copy of that
Sure.
report
Yeah.
to the district councilwoman and the chair and all of us, so we
Will do.
can also have a part of it as we move
Yeah.
forward in this
Yeah, of course.
process?
And as part of that plan, and so my unit, we are citywide, and so the overdose crisis is citywide. Oh, here's copies of the plan. I can get them to you today. We are, the units focus citywide, but we do spend a majority of our time focused on Kensington because it is the epicenter. But I might be remiss if I didn't say that overdoses are rising in every neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia, specifically impacting Black and brown communities outside of Kensington as well. So my job is making sure that we don't take our foot off the gas at all in Kensington, but trying to figure out how can we also increase outreach and engagement and education around overdose risk in other communities as well.
And last but not least, and because the opioid response team is specifically focusing on Kensington, from the administration standpoint, are we investing additional dollars and resources around this particular issue, totally separate than what we're doing across the city in terms of us addressing this from a state of emergency approach? Because again, what's taking place in Kensington isn't taking place in all parts of the city of Philadelphia, irregardless of what people look like in their neighborhoods. It's not taking place across the city of Philadelphia. It's like Kensington has a special treatment where you can kind of do what you want to do, right? And so I'm trying to figure out, are we aggressively saying we're being intentional about investing resources and support in this particular part of the city of Philadelphia? Because it is a crisis nationally and even globally. People point to Kensington as an example of what not to do in terms of operating and moving forward in the city. So I just want to see, is there like a special treatment for this area?
Yeah, there's definitely been additional funding identified for it. We can always use more funding, though. I mean, as it was talked about, just to get additional people and services and resources out there. I don't think we're at scale for most of our programs. I don't think we have enough resources that's needed for the crisis.
Well, if I could, Member Johnson.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
The reason why Member Lozada, Member Harity, Member Squilla introduced the Kensington Marshall Plan is so that we would intensify, double down on what resources are uniquely needed for here. Because if these streets aren't safe, nowhere is safe. And yeah, we're going to look at other parts of the district. I don't have a Kensington, but if we're not able to walk down those streets, then it's not fair to anywhere. And so you have about 6 months before the 100th mayor comes in. And they're going to look to these individuals on this stage to say, what is the best thinking what is the best sea change that we can make as a municipality? How much resource? The purpose of this whole hearing is tell us what you need now, because in 6 months, we don't, every day we don't do something, it gets worse. Again, yes, there is a problem citywide, but it's intensified right here. And that a lot of times, people will go get orders. They'll go into a tavern, say, what do you need out of CVS? What do you need out? I'm going shopping for you. Personal shopping. We have to send a signal that we care about people's human needs. I got members that fight for that kind of resource, but we also have to fight for the small business that takes their treasury out of their pocket, their life investment, to make sure that they don't. I talked to a gentleman outside who has to think about whether or not this is even worth it to him and his family. Like, I'm investing all my money and it's going right out the door. So this plan, we don't have forever. And as Member Johnson talked about, we have to start measuring it. We have to start, we want to put resources in other neighborhoods, but we're not going anywhere. And we have a commitment to the members who represent this area that this is ground zero. And that's not a good designation. So as the orchestra conductor, we need to hear the music. I'm sorry. Member Squilla was next. He was real patient.
Council member, could I just add a little something?
Yes.
I appreciate that. Again,
Eva Gladstein.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Just as an example of some of the things that we've done differently in Kensington would be the establishment of the new police district, which is now several years old at this point. The cleaning schedule, which we all think is inadequate, is well beyond what we do in any other neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia. And the investment that we have made prior to the opioid settlement and with the opioid settlement is, again, far different than we do in other neighborhoods. So, and this is not totally inclusive, because not every department breaks out its staff in certain ways, but $70 million annually at a minimum that is going to this community. And then, again, some of the investments that Noel already spoke about in terms of opioid settlement funds going in really to be a significant investment in this planning process, which is not the city's, but it is community engaged, it's trauma informed, it's being led by the neighborhood, and that's why we felt it was so important to invest, to get it off the ground and to make it a very real process. So,
Did you just say 70 million?
70. Yes.
70 million.
Yes.
Take a deep breath.
I just walked the community today with providers who get grants or get money from the city and federal and state money to clean this neighborhood. In all honesty, when you walk this neighborhood, do you think that they're doing their jobs? In all honesty, is this the conditions that you would let your family walk around in? Because I'm going to tell you, and I'm working with Noel because I'm really trying to be respectful to who I believe are my colleagues in the city, right? I don't want to embarrass anybody. That's not my goal here. But there are over 7 or 8 different entities that get a lot of money to clean this community. Many of their services or many of their times overlap. We can't see it. We can't even walk on the sidewalks. We walked about 10 blocks today, and we had to walk on the street over piles of trash. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Deputy Commissioner Keith Warren, who consistently responds to our call as it relates to trash, but there is no way that trash is being addressed and that it is a priority in this neighborhood. There's no way. And if it is, if you say it is, then I need you to tell me what we're going to do different. Because 70 million is obviously not enough. I don't know how. Or the providers that we are funding are not doing their jobs. And we need to figure out how we redistribute that money.
So let me be clear. We have already agreed today it is not working. I think people are working very hard. You don't see the results of that work because we either have to scale it up, change the schedule, or do both. But I want to be clear that that $70 million is not only going towards cleaning, it's going to other resources as well. And so I don't want that to be misunderstood either.
We needed to go to cleaning. We need to start peeling back on all of the issues that we have in this community. And some of the low-hanging fruit that we discussed in the last meeting that was requested by the people of this community was trash collection, right? We have agreed that we will do a pilot, right? And that we
Yes.
will work on 24-hour cleaning. But I've been asking for that since November. So why are we still here trying to figure out if we can get everyone on board to just pick up the trash? And that means that in order for us to have less trash, everyone here who provides a service to this community needs to do their work in order to get rid of the people who are living on the street, who are putting the trash on the ground.
We welcome your partnership with this. I just want to respect, as you do, I know everybody in council does, the hard work of the people who are behind those trash trucks, who are out there in the park and out there on the streets. They are working hard. They are doing things that I don't do, and I know many of us would find very, very difficult to do. We, as a system, have already talked about the fact that we need to increase that. That will take more resources, people and money, as well as schedule changes. We committed to starting to work on that with you, and we'll continue to partner with you on that.
Thank you. Member Lozada. Chair recognizes Member Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Kensington plan, maybe we're saying it's just started. There's been a plan in Kensington for the last 10 years of how to deal with this issue. Every time we go to a meeting, we hear the same ideas about how we're doing it. I don't care how much resources you put in to what we're doing. If we're not addressing the problem, it's not going to fix the situation. The problem is the people that are on the street that are addicted to drugs. Are we looking at long-term continuum of care? Are we looking at how do we get these people into treatment when they are endangering themselves and the people around them? Are we looking at the folks that need the most help, that are being able to be enabled to stay on the street because of some of the services that we provide, right? We talk about open beds. We have all these open beds for people who are in addiction, right? But the people aren't going. What are we doing to address the problem to get them off the street? And if people cannot make the decision for themselves, what are we doing working with the state or others instead of a 302 or something else that we could then commit them? We created something called AmpCourt that's supposed to be able to help people to be able to go into treatment and to be done by a judge. That is something to be able to help people. We spend a lot of time and resources putting that together. How are we working in that organization, in those steps, to get people into court and get people sometimes into treatment even though they don't want to go? We're tired of hearing that we went and engaged them. Our folks do a great job, and our cleaning people do a great job. But I don't care how much money we put into cleaning. When we allow other people to come throw trash on the street after they're done cleaning, they got to come back and do the same thing. So the problem is the people on the street, and how are we getting them off the street? Instead of saying that it's okay for them to stay on the street because they don't want to go anywhere. That is not an answer. We have failed. They said time and time again, we do the same thing over and over again, and we expect a different result. The reason why the streets are the way they are is because we allow people to live on the street, and he said, because they're not hurting themselves. They are killing themselves slowly. This is a public health crisis. When we had COVID, right, we closed stores, we closed shops, we did whatever we do so people can't go out, right, so we could protect them. What are we doing to the people on the street that are killing themselves slowly? We're not doing anything. No, we're doing, we're giving more help to stay on the street. That's what our policy has been. And our policy has failed. It has failed because now we have more people coming. The last couple times I've been down here, the last 2 weeks, an influx of people from Norristown. Why are people from Norristown coming to Philadelphia? I ran into 7 people, 5 of them from Norristown. Right? I don't know why they're here, but they're here because they could stay here.
All right.
But a public health
go-
crisis. We close stores, we close businesses. Kensington's in a public health crisis, right? Not only with mental health and addiction, but then you have defecation, urination, and everything else that's going on that our kids have to walk through, needles all over the place, right? Why don't we close the streets and say, hey, where do you live? You live here? All right, you could go. If not, you got to go into treatment. You can't be on the street sleeping in the streets. Let's help these people. Let's work with the state and work with others to get them the assistance they really need instead of continuing to enable them to kill themselves. And I think we want to hear from health what we're doing in that aspect, and not only the nice sound quotes of how many people we have assisted. We have open beds, but people don't go. Why don't they go? Right? We have medical assistance treatment that we have roving vans now giving MAT out, right? But we're still enabling people to stay on the streets. They can't take care of themselves. They can't make a decision for themselves. They're hurting themselves and they're hurting the people surrounding them. What are we doing to help them and get them off the street?
So as we ask people to address Member Squilla's question and how we can be helpful, I want to also recognize that Member Kendra Brooks is with us. Is there anyone from the administration that wishes to take on the issue of homelessness and the opportunity to treat people that are in the Kensington area, many of whom aren't from Philly? Anyone?
Good evening.
Good evening. State your name.
Dr. Cheryl Bettigal, I'm the Health Commissioner. So I'm going to just briefly address the public health question and physical health question, and then I'm going to defer to my colleague, Dr. Jill Bowen from Behavioral Health. The laws on when we can treat somebody against their will are extremely strict in the state of Pennsylvania. And requiring somebody or providing medical care against somebody's will is considered
Can't
to be
hear
a
you.
form of assault. Can you hear me?
Speak closer.
Can you use
Sorry.
another mic?
Go.
Yeah,
There you
there you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Shall I repeat what I just said?
Yes.
So the laws in the state of Pennsylvania about the provision of medical care against somebody's will are very, very strict. And Dr. Bowen can talk more about the 302 process. But essentially providing medical care to somebody against their will, except in a very narrow circumstance, is considered to be assault. So while we might, and there are many situations where we desperately want to provide medical care to somebody who is saying no, we have to convince them. We cannot just provide the care that we feel is necessary without their consent. I do want to,
Can I stop you 1 second? We're going to assault somebody by helping them, right? So if we try to help somebody, it's going to consider assault.
Not if we try to help them, but if we provide medical care that they have not agreed to. That is not something that we are allowed to under Pennsylvania law.
Well, then we need to work with our state colleagues and legislators to help us create a law so that we could help people help themselves. If we're going to allow people to slowly die and say, you know what, it's okay that they do that because we'll be assaulting them if not, is not helping them. And it's definitely not helping the people who live in this community because that negatively impacts them all around. So I say that if we're going to use the law as an excuse and saying that helping somebody or taking them in is considered an assault, then we have to change the law because we know maybe it's not considered a 302, right? Maybe it's considered something else. Are we looking at other ways to get people into treatment, whether it's on their will or against their will, so they have to complete it?
I think that was my segue. Okay, so I think that.
are playing into the containment strategy that already exists here.
So you're giving valuable testimony, but our stenographer may not be able to capture it. So if I understood you correctly, you agreed with Member Lozada's point when where help and distribution should occur, it should be spread out.
Avenue has to be spread. The people that live on our streets come from all over the city. Services have to be provided all over the cities. Can't all be here all the time.
Got it.
We use their names
Ketchy
for
has said the
questions,
same
we know what
thing
they're doing.
when she first
We've
started
asked them
out.
about 302, we've asked them about forced treatment, we've asked them about putting them in front of a judge. This administration is not going to do that. So this is something that I've sat through for 6 years. We've all in this community attended these as different council people. The rest of the players have played the same. But you should meet with us and we can help you, walk you through what we've been through for 6 years and the answers that we had. These are asking questions we already have the answers to. They're not taking tents down because the city created a policy. It's not because they don't want to take them down. It's not because they can't take them down. They only have to wait 24 hours, and I came right from the city solicitor. I was there when she told Mayor Kenny, who was surprised by it. This administration created 30-day encampments, 30-day eviction processes. They keep everything here, and they spread it out so it stays here. This doesn't happen in any other part of the city, but yet I see tents pop up, but they're gone within hours. They don't let them sleep on the sidewalk. They need treatment, they need help. The other thing you should be looking at is the money that's put into Kensington, rather than looking at it as 70 million, see where it goes. Because you have providers that get paid a monthly fee, they don't have to bother to fill their beds with users because they get paid the same amount of money every month. So there's no motivation to fill them. So start questioning that before you ask us where they can go on our streets and provide services, because for 6 years, none of them have made a difference.
All right, Member Squilla, you have any other?
If you want to
So,
respond.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I would like to respond to is some of the points that you, Dr. Jill Bowen, Commissioner, Department of Behavioral Health, Intellectual Disability Services. Some of the points that you were making, Councilman Squilla. And I also want to go back to the purpose of this hearing where you asked what's going to be different. You asked how you can help. You asked what we would do if we had that kind of support. So I would like to respond to that as well, if I may. Okay? So in terms of how do you get people into treatment? So I want to say that what we want, what we all want, is for people to be off the street, in treatment, and the goal is long-term recovery, okay? So that's the goal, and that's what our aim is. When something doesn't work, we actually pivot from it, right? And we try something else. When we've been successful, success has different definitions. It's not successful for the community. They are not seeing the results of all of this effort. It's successful for some of the people that made it into treatment and into housing and are having a life now that they wouldn't have otherwise had. We talk about harm reduction. From our point of view, harm reduction is step one. It's not step done, because it's not just saving a life, it's having a life that you live that's a quality of life. That means getting into treatment, getting into services. But there are problems along the way, and that's what we are focusing on now intensively, are what is the access problem to getting people into treatment. Some yes, some say no, but sometimes they say no, and then they say no, and then they say yes. So you never stop, right? You keep going. And then you look at what is it that is blocking really rapid access. Of late, it's been those wounds that have blocked people from being able to get into rehab.
Why? Why does a wound block access?
So let me finish. It blocks access because it's such horrific wounds that it needs medical care before they can get onto the rehab unit. So what we built for the first time ever, the state is very interested, the feds are very interested, because nobody's done this before anywhere, is that we created a rehab program that comes directly connected with the post-acute services. So you can get medical treatment and begin the rehab and shift over. It's not been done before. We created a sustainable model. Now the question is...
It hasn't been done before because of policies, though.
No,
Hasn't been
it
done
hasn't
before
been-
because you couldn't
it's
get
not.
care.
It's not policies. I'm sorry, Councilman. It's not policies.
It is so.
It hadn't been thought about how you switch the regulation. You work through regulation.
Regulation. Who makes the
and
regulations?
funding sources.
Who makes the regulations?
The regulations are usually state regulations, but you can work through them and find a way through, and we did. The problem is we now have a program that's really effective, and we need quite a bit more of it. What would work and would be helpful in terms of the question to council is to scale up what is effective, where we are seeing things that are working. And when I say working, I mean working. What would work for the community and work for the individuals who are on the street is to get off the street. That works for everybody. So anything that's effective doing that has to be scaled up. When we talk about recovery houses where people can go and there's not enough of them, we still have a waiting list for people to get into recovery houses. That would be a place.
Well, you said there's a waiting list?
To get into recovery houses, that's not the same thing as a treatment bed. But yes, there is a waiting list for recovery houses.
How about for treatment beds?
We do not have a waiting list for treatment beds. The question you asked Councilmember Harity last time was about the treatment beds, and we do not have a waiting list to get into treatment beds. It's over 2,000 beds. We answered, I think we sent you that response. It's over 2,000 beds in our system. Today we have 56 beds available. We do have access into our treatment system. What I'm talking about is the recovery housing to get people off the street. We need low barriers so that even if they're not completely ready, they can come in. And we need the regular recovery houses so that they can come in. But here's what happens, because I want to really be clear that we're talking about system change here if we really want to have change. It's not about each individual program, it's about system change, right? What happens when somebody comes out of a recovery house and they've gone through treatment and they go back out and they don't have housing and they don't have a job? Do we expect them to succeed if those social determinants are not also addressed?
That's what we need to provide.
Yes.
That's what we need to be doing.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
that
Yes.
is part of the Kensington plan. It is to accomplish, and housing is definitely a number one priority, not only for us, but for the new mayor. I know that I've spoke to her on numerous occasions. She's looking at 30,000. I think it's ambitious, but I'll take it. 30,000 affordable housing units. That would be phenomenal. But, you know, to that end, I have read some studies coming out of Houston who had a very bad problem with homelessness. At one point, almost 66% of their residents were homeless because of mental illness. And it was shocking because most of their homelessness wasn't because of drug. It was part of it, but it wasn't thing. It was partially because of their cost of living and how much housing costs there. And by installing a housing first method, they were able to drastically drop that. So what's saying is, if we think about it on a line, well, like you said, once they get out of treatment, where are they going to go? Well, we need to have that plan ahead of time before they go into treatment, so that way it gives them a better chance to succeed.
So, if I could, for me to understand, we don't have a problem with the number of recovery beds.
Okay, so just to clarify.
We have a problem with long-term housing.
So, yes, no, let me just be clear, right? So recovery housing is not the same as a treatment bed. So a treatment bed is like
It's
the
a halfway
base-
house.
Well, even the halfway house is treatment, right? Because those are those ASAM levels you'll made here, level 3.5, level 3.7, level 4.0, depending on what the needs are of the person. So that's an actual treatment that's billable through, managed care. That's a treatment. What a recovery house is, that's not treatment. It's not billable. The city covers the cost for some of them, right? We have about 500 beds. I mean, it's not a small amount, but we need hundreds more, right? So those those beds are not treatment beds. So to be clear, what happens then is people come from treatment and can go into those beds, and then they have opportunity to get further along towards some more long-term recovery, not go back out on the street and then back out on the street and back out on the street. But what happens when they get through that process is there needs to be another process. We have to pay attention to the impact of those social determinants: poverty, housing, jobs. We have to pay attention to that, to integrate that all into this plan, into this system. And we are intensively working on that, but it is very difficult. It's a very complex problem. It's a huge problem. In Philadelphia, half the population is Medicaid eligible. Half. Yet that speaks to the deep poverty in this city. So we really have a very significant challenge.
Well, we have the opioid crisis there. I got a little thing for you. How about we go to some of these recovery houses where people are sitting there unemployed, and we try to fill the 1 in 5 jobs that we have vacant in the city of Philadelphia.
We do. We have job programs. We have job programs specifically. We have job training. All of this is integrated into that recovery house experience, and some of them do come out even while they're in that kind of recovery experience. Some of them are working, okay? But it's not just, it's connecting people to the jobs that are sustainable for them, right? That get them to be.
That is a fair statement. So what I'd like to do, guys, we have an ambitious group to testify. Can we expedite some of the testifiers so that we can get to the community? Mr. Cohen?
I do just want to clarify, if I may. I was talking about licensed recovery houses.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and give my testimony. My name is Sonia Bingham. I'm a resident here in Harrogate. Many of you know me. I'm a balls and strikes type of girl. I call it like I see it. Noelle, Liz, Jill, we've been working together. You know, you continuously tell me how much you appreciate my advocacy in the community, but you don't, right? The Kensington Plan meeting happened last week. Shannon asked why I wasn't involved. It's because I'm not solution-based oriented, right? I have solutions. We have solutions in the room. The problem here is your conflicted commitment, right? You're conflicted in your commitment because what has happened here is we, as community residents, now have to have a stake in someone's recovery. We have to have a stake in whether someone has a home, but no one has a stake whether our children make it to school safely. No one has a stake in how they're processing all of the things that are happening around them. But we have to be concerned with people who do not have the right to occupy the spaces that they are. Those are ours, right? I'm the president of the Friends of Harrogate Park group. What we've been left with is the police officers to help us, because none of you have. We've been talking about the same thing over and over and over again. And to say you spent $70 million, you are getting a return on your investment. Because you are not investing in us. It is not happening. Not at the scales in which you're investing in needle exchange and making sure resources are being brought here. We don't have the same commitment from you. We watched last month when we had a crisis in our city how every agency lined up, state, local, federal, everybody lined up. We fixed Interstate 95 in less than 2 weeks. And we don't need $70 million. You know what we need? The same principle I run my house. You can't be here. My kids told me, oh, I want to smoke pot. You can smoke all the pot you want, but you won't smoke it here. And that's what we do in the park. And that's why we don't have the influx like they do in the other parks. Because you can't do that here. That behavior is unacceptable. And I don't care if you recover. I mean, I hope you do. Some part of me does, right? But living here has made me care less and less about people and whether or not they recover, live or die, because of your failure. And we're here again at another meeting where you feign these same answers, you try to color it with a new tagline on a new initiative, and I call bull. It's the same thing. And all you have to do is say, disrupt the behavior. They'll get tired of, we have to move, we have to go. That's it. That doesn't cost a lot of money. You can't be here. You do it everywhere else in the city. You can't be here, but they can be here. You need to ask yourselves why. Why are you telling me about how many beds, and why should I have to care? I don't have a drug problem. Are you worried about my bills being paid? Are you worried about my lights on? Are you trying to help me pay my daughter's tuition? Because these are my real life problems. Are you going to meet me where I'm at? Nobody wants to meet us where we're at, but we're being consistently asked to meet people where they're at without care for our livelihood. And I'm over it. Solution-based, do your job. There's no accountability. You don't measure, it's measured differently. You're failing. You're failing the people on the street, and you're definitely failing the residents. Tax-paying residents, by the way. I mean, I don't understand. And the nerve of you to say that you're having a community-based new group meeting and you didn't call upon the content experts, because I'm not solution-based. I'm not your solution-based. How dare you stifle the voices of the community so you guys can purport your own agenda? Because that's what you did. You took my voice away from me because I don't agree and align with your solutions. How dare you come here and say you're concerned when you're not? I've been to every meeting. I've done everything you've asked us to do. I've stood in the front line. I've partnered with you. Everything you've asked us to do, I communicated with the community, put myself in harm's way. My house was firebombed. Someone broke into my garage. You have been there, and you're gonna not invite me to a meeting to tell you about the concerns of the community that I represent? How dare you? And some of you on city council too, not the new ones. I emailed all of you when those things were happening. Not a one of you, except for Councilman Kenyatta and Squilla, of course, answered my call. Shame on you to come here and act like this is new. Shame on you.
Yo, girl. Well, yeah, guys. Okay. Um, Thank you for your testimony, but we're going to get, can we move to other people to testify? I'm recommending we go with DA Larry Krasner. All right, we're going to be respectful. Thank you for your patience, District Attorney Krasner. You kind of heard the... All right, come on, guys. Bear with us. I know this is painful, but we need to have frank conversations. And I think if we keep talking and keep working, we can get to solutions. So could you state your name for the record and help us with what you've heard today?
Yes, I can. Council member, good evening. Larry Krasner, I'm the DA in Philadelphia County. I am seated here with Robert Listenby, who is my first assistant and who is someone who's dedicated his entire life, really, to working with juveniles in the criminal justice system, including serving as the head of juvenile justice for Barack Obama in his second term.
If you could bring your mic a little closer.
I'm sorry. In addition to Mr. Listenby, I'm also here with Curtis Croston from our Community Engagement Unit, and I'm also here with Jeff Hajnowski. Mr. Hajnowski is an assistant district attorney in our homicide non-fatal shooting unit. At 40 years of age, he has become a very young assistant supervisor in that unit. He is someone who's been a lawyer for a decade, and he is also a proud graduate of the school we are in right now. He is a resident of Kensington. He was born in Kensington, and he is here, and I hope you'll give him the opportunity to do this. I understand time is short. I'll come back. I will come back again. I will say more. I was here last time. I'm here today. I'll come back again. But I hope you will give Mr. Hajnowski an opportunity to do what I've asked him to do, which is talk to you specifically about 3 cases he prosecuted that involve violence that occurred in this area, in the Kensington area, all of them prosecuted successfully because that's the kind of work that he does. I don't mind coming back.
District Attorney, there's no doubt that you're prosecuting murders and you're prosecuting those charges. What we'd like to know about is the quality of life issues that we're facing. There's no doubt that you're going after the murderers, you're going after the thing. Nobody has a doubt about that. What we would like to know is what the stuff is that affects us, which is our quality of life, which happens to be partially retail theft, drug use, as my chairman, drug sales for sure, and as our chairman said, people shooting up. He's seen it just coming here within a couple of minutes of being here. Our children have to see it every day.
Councilmember Harity, I'm getting some mixed messages here. I heard Councilmember Jones say he wanted to hear about solutions, and he didn't just say solutions to retail theft.
District Attorney, please calm down. I'm not going after you. I'm asking you an honest question. I'm being calm. I have not even raised my voice yet.
Councilmember.
So what I'm asking, all I'm asking, is what are you going to change differently to deal with our quality of life issues here in Kensington? I'm just asking what you're doing. We've had civil conversations where the two of us have talked and have come to agreements on things. All I want to know is what, now that you have some numbers and facts of what's going to happen here in our neighborhood. I'm not trying to beat up anybody. I'm not trying to single anybody out. You've seen, I asked the police commissioner and them the hard questions too. All we want to know is what are you going to change? What are you going to do differently to help us help our neighbors? And that's it. I'm not trying to rise you. I'm not trying to get you to get up and leave. I would actually like you to answer our question.
May I speak?
With that, as chair of this committee, could you respond to what he's talking about?
Yes.
Because that's the sentiment of the people in this room.
I am happy to respond to
Thank
that. But I want to be clear. I will come back. I will answer this question today and in much more detail later, because last time I checked, you're running out of time. Part of the reason I was hoping Hachnowski could do his talking is so he doesn't have to come back, because he's got homicide cases to prosecute. And it's part of my job to be here when he's prepping those
We
cases.
to let him go and prosecute homicide cases. That's great. Testimony we want to hear is about what's happening with our quality of life. Sorry, Mr. District.
Well,
I don't wanna
I'm sorry
upset
too.
you.
I do want you to know I consider you a friend and an ally. I supported you in this last election. We have had civil conversations. And if I am even half as assertive as you are, sir, it's only because I think the problem is retail theft, it is drug use, it is drug dealing, but it's also shootings and it's also homicides. We are dealing with an area that comprises almost 50% of the locations that have the most shootings in the city of Philadelphia. And it's all interconnected, and you and I know this. The illegal drug trade, the poverty, the addiction, all of these things go together, and they're part of the reason that it drives the violence. If what you are saying is that Mr. Hachnowski's testimony is not necessary, then let me move on, and then maybe there'll be another occasion for that. Solutions is what I heard. And those solutions do include a lot of the issues that you're talking about. So here is a solution with reference to retail theft. It's something we have discussed. There has been a very long history of retail theft prosecutions being about individuals. And the truth about retail theft prosecutions of individuals is that about 70, 80, 90% of the time they fail. Why do they fail? Because the witnesses don't come. And because the defendants don't come a lot. Do we prosecute it? Yes, we do. We prosecute it with summary charges that are subject to 90 days in jail or other periods of time in jail. And when we have prolific offenders or people who keep offending, which is a very small portion of the ones who are arrested, we are perfectly willing to go after felonies, to go after misdemeanors, to put them in state prison. We have done that. We are willing to do that. But there is a new idea, because the ideas in this area have failed for 60 years. There is a new idea. It's called a Retail Theft Task Force. And the idea is that instead of going for all the minnows, you also, in addition to that, you go for the shark. And what is the shark? The shark is the warehouse that is collecting the stolen goods. The warehouse that is using the internet to sell millions of dollars worth of stolen goods. The warehouse where somebody is giving a list to people who are addicted, telling them what to steal and what to bring back. And that is real. It is real. We have met with a lot of the.
If we get the small guy, then we can get him to give up the big guy. But the bottom line, I get it, and I get what that's trying to accomplish. I get that. I'm respectful of it. But what I'm trying to say to you is those little guys that you're considering little guys is the reason we have no stores. I mean, where would you like my neighbors to buy their groceries or their prescriptions?
Well, what I would like is something that works. And what I know does not work from nearly 40 years in criminal justice is ignoring the big guys. Yes, we do need to pursue the little guys in ways that are appropriate. Yes, we do that. When there is an arrest on a summary, we pursue it, and those people are subject to up to 90 days in jail. When there is an arrest for a prolific offender, we pursue it. We put them in state prison. We're willing to do that. If you think that solved the problem, then we can look backward at 60 years, because the fact is, it hasn't.
How many people actually received 90 days?
I can try to get you that number, but what I would like to know is, are you willing to fund the
All
work
right,
that
ladies and
needs to be
gentlemen,
done?
he has the mic. We will let him speak, and then we will ask questions.
So this was a part of my budget request, and I want to tell you I'm very grateful for what council did in terms of supporting our new carjacking unit. As I'm sure you know, carjacking numbers are getting better, and in supporting our getting gun violence prosecutors like Jeff Hachnowski out in the community, which is where he is now. I'm very grateful for that support. But there are other areas that don't cost that much, because that could make a really big difference. So one of those areas is to, in addition to going after the little guys, trying to flip the little guys, trying to get the info off the little guys, is to go after the people who are really profiting from it. Because it's no fun to steal anymore if you can't get any money off the stuff that you stole. And if you are addicted to drugs, and many of them are, you have to be focused on getting that money. So if you can take away the fences, in other words, the people who receive the stolen goods and then resell them for millions of dollars, you have taken a big dent out of the motivation and the energy that will go into that kind of activity by people who are addicted to drugs. So that is a new idea. It's something that has never been done in Kensington. It's something we want to do, and all I would ask from you is to consider at the mid-year, if we come to you for funds, please consider and a reasonable amount, please consider supporting a retail theft task force that will not just focus on the minnows, but will also go for the sharks. When we talk about drugs, it's a similar situation. This office vigorously pursues and prosecutes people for drug dealing, okay? We do what we can with that, but the true history of how there has been enforcement around drugs in Kensington has been, it's mostly grab and go. It's mostly getting young people on the corner who, after they're arrested, are replaced within 24 hours by another young person on the corner. And the people making the real money, the family that has owned that block for 2 decades and rents out pieces of that block to other drug dealers, those people, for the most part, get away with it, except when you engage in serious enforcement against that family. So I will give you an example of a success that we've had, a success I would like to do more and more in Kensington and elsewhere, which was taking down drug activity at Kip and Cambria. This was a couple of years ago. It was a bust where we used wiretaps. So we're listening to people who are professional drug dealers doing the drug dealing. This is not just watching 3 kids on the corner sell 3 packages on the corner. This is getting the real owners of the operation. The arrest involved over 60 people. They were all professional drug dealers. To the best of my recollection, every single one of them was convicted, and the drug activity in that area, which was multi-generational ownership by a particular family, took down 2 generations, and it brought a lot of improvement to that area for a very, very long time. All I need for that is wiretaps, okay? It's an issue I've been raising now for 4 years within city government, not necessarily with all of you, but with some of you. What I need is wiretaps. That's a little bit more money for people who listen to the wires all day. It's a little money to make sure some of them speak the appropriate language that might be involved. It's a little bit more equipment. But this is not an incredibly expensive thing, and it is not only good for dealing with big-time drug dealers, it's really good for dealing with people who are shooting people. That is something that we ought to be able to do, and it's not a terribly expensive thing. And that is different. That's not how it's been done. Now, in terms of big-time drug dealing, I can tell you, we were hearing earlier about a sweep where $77,000 were obtained, and I think I heard about $1 million worth of drugs in street value. To give you an example of the power of using wiretaps, my office for 2.5 years pursued some drug dealing that went all the way back to the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. We eventually were able to involve DEA, some of the foreign DEAs. There were moments in that investigation when a tractor trailer was at the side of the road with $1 million cash wrapped in cellophane being pulled out of the cab, and hundreds of kilos of incredibly dangerous drugs were being taken at a time. That case was so huge that even though it was our investigation, we eventually allowed the feds to prosecute it because it was that big. We can do big things, and we can do big things in terms of enforcement, and we can do those big things for not a whole lot of money. All we have to do is admit that not everything has worked in the last 60 years in Kensington. If we're willing to do things a little bit differently, Retail Theft Task Force, if we're willing to use wiretaps in ways to try to get at the drug dealing, but also get at the shootings that are going on, we can make a big difference. In terms of some other quality of life issues, we have an elder justice unit that didn't used to exist, which is there to protect seniors from all the different kinds of frauds that are brought down on them. We could use a little help with that. We have tremendous lawyers working on house theft and deed theft, which is rampant in this city. It's an absolute plague in this city. The only limitation I have is if I have only a couple detectives and I have 1 prosecutor, how many houses can I do? This is a community, this is a city famous for home ownership, and yet we're allowing people to steal houses, and we're allowing them to do it in sweeping ways. We have had successful prosecutions, but we need a little bit of support there. And then, of course, this brings us to some other issues. Another thing we can do along the lines of the issues that affect this community is we can work with SEPTA. Just this morning, I was sitting in a room with Chief Lawson and with Leslie Richards, who is the chief of SEPTA, among other people from her team. SEPTA is essential to this community, and it needs our support. We have already discussed ways that we can support SEPTA, and frankly, SEPTA does tremendous service to this community in many ways, one of those ways being it has a state-of-the-art camera system. Do not commit crimes on SEPTA when those cameras are pointed at you, because I can count your freckles. And if you're going to run away from a crime, and I can give you examples, do not run away from a crime on SEPTA, because I'm going to get to see when you're fist bumping about the crime that you committed, and you're smirking about the crime that you committed, and I'm going to get to see where you set your hand onto a stainless steel bench so our forensics experts can go pull your handprint. And those are real examples. I'm not making that stuff up. So another thing that we can do is to see what we can do to work with SEPTA. But at the root of an awful lot of these issues, I will say, in addition to the whole prevention side, and I know you're short on time, I will come back. I'm happy to speak more.
Some time, Mr. District Attorney. Here's a lot of questions.
Okay. I was under the impression this was ending soon, but if not, I'll stay here till midnight, and we can do that. You know, I do want to say this, though. I think it's really important to understand that what happens in terms of gun violence affects Kensington profoundly. Of the 57 blocks that the Philadelphia Inquirer described, we mapped them. 28 of them were right in and around Kensington. Half of them were right in and around Kensington. So when we talk about gun violence, we are talking about Kensington. And when we talk about Kensington, we are talking about gun violence. And despite the fact that the numbers are going in a better direction in the middle of this terrible crisis that is affecting so many people so adversely, there is an enormous thing that can be done that frankly doesn't cost all that much money that would make a huge difference. And that is this. We need forensics. We have an excellent chief of forensics who happens to be in the room, Dr. Garvey. He's working with too little. He is working with too little. It is affecting our ability to put consequences on crimes. Let me give you just one example. In order for us to prove our cases that involve shootings and that involve gun possession, we need Philadelphia Police Department firearms examiners to test those guns, to examine those guns, to measure those guns. Not that long ago, there were 22. Right now, it's about 5, okay? So what does that mean? What that means is that when I go to court with a case where I need a firearms examiner's report, and we are 9 months after the arrest or 12 months after the arrest, some really good firearms examiners are working as hard as they can, but 5 people can't do the work of 22. So we are going to lose those cases, and we're going to lose those cases because we cannot produce the evidence that we need, or a judge is going to throw it out because we didn't have it. Now, I understand that's not the sexiest political thing to talk about, that we need more firearms examiners, or we need more people to take fingerprints. It might not be the sexiest thing to talk about how we got a 47,000 square foot lab and we need 150,000 square feet. But what that actually means is we solve a lot more crimes. We solve a lot more crimes in Kensington. We have cases that are a lot stronger. When people get caught, and more of them will get caught, more of them are going to plead guilty because they know they got no shot at trial. The trials will come more quickly, the convictions will come more quickly, and we will also have more certainty that we got the right people, that the guilty people got caught and the innocent people didn't. That is absolutely worth every penny, and it's not that many pennies. We just heard recently of an expenditure of $250 million for police overtime. I'm just going to assume that was all necessary. Well, the price tag for a complete state-of-the-art forensics lab is at most $150 million. And if you use an old building and retrofit it, it's more like $100 million. We are talking about pennies.
I got to get a point of information.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Member Johnson.
Yeah, just for a point of information, and you and I work together on this issue around gun violence, which I'm very passionate about. But I do want to just give
Put the mic up. Put the mic up.
It's on, it's on.
Yeah, here, this is.
I just want to get an understanding for clarity, and probably for the wider public as well. Because, all right, we talk about investment in forensics, and obviously, that's things members of council are working on. That's the well, right? And as Mr. Chairman talked about, we're talking about the minerals. And so I'm trying to get an understanding that until we actually get this superistic, like fantastic forensic site, right? What are we doing in the meantime with your team and the Philadelphia Police Department and the detectives in the Philadelphia Police Department rolling up their sleeves every single day, right? Until we get this big forensic investment to address the issue around going after individuals who are murdering and shooting people here in the city of Philadelphia. So I'm just trying to get, because we're not going to have this forensic facility anytime soon with people being murdered and shot day in
3
and day
years.
out. So what are we doing collectively,
3 years.
right? Your team and their team. We're not even talking about their overtime. Some of the overtime is probably warranted just based upon the levels of gun violence that we're actually seeing, but we're not pointing fingers. We're talking about getting inside the room, because you said solutions, right?
Right.
Not what they're getting versus what you're getting, right? But what are we doing collectively around this issue to make sure the detectives are doing their side, the policing are doing their side, and the DAs are saying this is good evidence. So when your ADAs do go up and fight a case, I mean, because it's kind of embarrassing to say that they're losing based upon not having investment. If it was me, I'm never going to say my team losing because we're not having resources. We're going to figure out what we have and actually go and get more. So I'm just trying to understand.
I'm happy to answer your question, Council Member, and I have truly enjoyed working with you in the past, especially along with Council Member Jones with the 100 Shooter Report and with public safety efforts on the part of City Council. So the real answer is that we work hard and closely all the time, and that's how the DA's office gets close to a 90% conviction rate for shootings and for homicides. That's reality. I understand that you may not have time for Mr. Hajnowski. He would have described to you 3 convictions that he's obtained in those serious cases in this area. Unlike other cases where the police do their work and then we do ours, when it comes to homicides, the coordination is much closer. And when it comes to some, not all, of the shooting cases, the ones that are, for example, done by our Gun Violence Task Force, which does use more forensics, which does use more phone technology. When it comes to that kind of work, that's the kind of work that is actually disrupting shooting groups for good. 02 to 4 is getting close to 0 to the no more. And that is specifically the result of having a toolkit we fought for, to be able to crack phones, to be able to download phones, and be able to get at these forensics. So we have never stopped working. The police department has never stopped working. I'll just give you an example of this kind of coordination. So it used to be our homicide prosecutors were separate from our shooting prosecutors. I made a decision to put them together for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons being the sharing of information, because people who shoot are sometimes the same people who shoot and kill, right? We did that, and we saw some real positive results in terms of our results. Well, the police department, not too long after that, maybe a year after that, came up for the first time with a shooting investigation group, which was a group that was going to work very specifically on shootings. We weren't going to have detectives all over the city doing what they could do on shootings. We were going to focus it in one place. And they also, of course, have invested in more detectives for homicides, which is wonderful. That's exactly what they should do. And just so we're clear, I didn't say they shouldn't have their overtime. God knows these homicide detectives. Yeah, I got you. Well, no, I mean, that's... Okay, well, that is definitely not how I
Guys.
feel. All right?
Guys.
But coming back to it...
Guys, let me pause you a minute. Conversation is good.
Okay.
We have to have difficult conversations, but we have to move towards solutions. That's the whole purpose of this. So what I'd like to do is let's pause on the whales. Let's talk about the minnows for a minute.
Yep.
Because what the people in this audience want to talk about is walking down the avenue and not being able to go to a store to get bread, butter, and cheese because the store's closed. They want to talk about the fact that they have to navigate in between people shooting up, people selling dope, and how that depresses their lives. So I got what you're saying about the crime lab. Me and my brother Kenyatta, we working on that money, both from the state and local. I heard the wiretap issue. I think it is a cost-effective way to come after some of the higher level, big drug dealers. But tell me how a year from now, we're going to be able to walk down that avenue and not be embarrassed that we are here.
So here, I'm going to give you the most honest answer I can, like I always do, and I know not everybody's going to love it, but I'm going to do it. The reason we don't have solutions right now, and we don't have solutions for 60 years, is because for 60 years we've been acting like it's a one-year problem. It's not a one-year problem.
Okay.
The fact, and I say that respectfully to you, because I would love to
I
have
don't-
it, I'd love
We
to
can
have it going in a year
conversation.
too.
I'm good with it.
You know, the reality is, most of the people sitting up on the stage, and I say this respectfully, are younger than this problem is. This problem goes back to the 1960s, and at its roots, the problem has been the only kind of investment that is made around here is in locking people up. It's not actually investing in opportunity. It's not investing in economics. It's not allowing people who do not vote at high rates to have power. The reality is that this community has gotten where it has gotten in large part because it didn't have money and it didn't have power, and people in elected office, not these people, not me, but people in elective office didn't care. That's the truth. So, you know, the reason we don't have that forensics lab now is because when we were talking about this 4 years ago, we kept hearing, well, how's that going to happen right away? Nothing's going to happen right away. But we're going to have decades and decades of nothing getting done here unless we, A, move towards new solutions, and we, B, are willing to do things that might take a couple years. So let me give you an example of what taking a couple years looks like. There is another city where they had 5,000 heroin users living on the street. 5,000 heroin users living on the street 20 years ago. They now have 1,000. They have an 80% reduction. And yes, I know, everybody would prefer that there was nobody on the street. But I think almost everybody in this room would tell you right now, if we could reduce the on-street drug-addicted population by 80%, that would definitely be a step in the right direction. It would definitely be improvement. Well, that plan didn't come from government. That plan came from a doctor. It did not come from judges, did not come from lawyers, did not come from police, although police were involved in carrying it out. That came from a doctor. There are things that have worked, and simply repeating in Kensington what has not worked for 60 years isn't all of a sudden going to work now. It might be good politics, but it certainly is not good policy, and is not going to improve the lives of people in Kensington. So I'm happy to give you the details on that. That is not just something I read about, that is something I saw. I went to that city. I was in that city. I went and saw heroin users in that city, hiding in the bushes, shooting up. And you know what I saw there? They were older. They were older. And the reason they were older is because you don't have young heroin users in that city, and a lot of the older heroin users you had were actually people who'd been off the stuff for 7 or 8 years, and they were relapsing. Well, I wish I could say that about Kensington, and I wish I could say that about Philadelphia, but when I look around and I see people addicted to drugs, what I see is an approach to this that unfortunately has not served the people who live in Kensington well, has not served the city well, and we got to be willing to try something else.
So I'm going to yield the mic to my colleagues because they are chomping at the bit. And this is not adversarial. This is to try to get to what we should expect. And so we're going to work on your wells. And we are working on your wells. We're looking under couches and pillows to make sure you have that crime lab, because we agree that the closure rate needs to be addressed on a number of crimes. But what we're here to talk about today is something more minnow, something more minute, and we may not agree that that is the direct approach that has long-term success, but what we're seeing right now is at a tipping point where it is unbearable. I heard a lady talk about that she can't take it anymore, and that this problem isn't paying her bills, and the alternative kind of is, should we just concede the neighborhood and move out? But none of us are here to do that. We're going to keep coming back. So I'm going to turn the mic over, and we'll ask some specific questions, quantitative questions about what is going on in the 20 blocks of Kensington.
27 blocks, right? You guys
27
have an
blocks.
initiative with 27 blocks.
Pull the mic
Dear
to
Krasner, can you tell me, you guys have, your 27 block initiative has been going on for how long now?
57.
So if I may.
Or 57, but 27 of them are here in the Kensington area, if I understand correctly.
It's about half, so that you understand, there is no 57 blocks initiative. There is none, and it is not my office. What has been going on is that the Philadelphia Inquirer put out an article. A lot of people were fascinated by it. The fact there are certain locations where even after you lock people up, you're having more shootings 2 years later, and then another shooting a year later. These are places where there is chronic violence. And those places, when you study them, have certain things going on: poverty, having been redlined before, et cetera, asthma, poor performance in schools, unemployment, that kind of stuff. So,
So within your 27 blocks here in the Kensington area that you guys are working on, we have lost many of our anchor stores, right? I think you've heard it multiple times, right? I'd like to know what your policy is on retail theft. And I'd like to know, you mentioned in our budget hearings that you guys have repeat offenders. We continue to hear about the 18 different diversion programs that you run out of the district attorney's office, which I think are a bit excessive, right? There's 18 of them. I don't understand why, because a lot of them overlap in services as far as from what I can see, right? What's your policy on retail theft? How do we change what that policy is that is obviously not working, because every day we lose a different store? If you drive up and down Kensington Avenue, you know, or you can see that these are owner-operators. These are people that have invested all of their life savings in this particular corridor and can't get their businesses to thrive because of what is happening here. So can you tell me what your policy is? How many arrests in this target area that you mentioned, how many arrests have been made here? How do you work with the police department to be able to address not just the repeat retail theft person, but the person who shows up and thinks that in this particular neighborhood, this is acceptable?
Well, all right, let me just say 57 blocks is a totally different concept. It is not a program. It is a good idea the community had, and we tried to support them in that, and perhaps it'll get some legs at some point. It actually is not too different than some of the ideas that are in the Kensington plan. But let's put that to the side. Your question was, what's our policy on retail theft? Policy on retail theft is to prosecute every retail theft. That is not otherwise in a diversion program. The police have a diversion program, which is PAD. We have some of them, but in general, if the police bring us a case, everyone is charged. Most of them will be charged with a summary offense, an offense that is punishable by a sentence of up to 90 days. When we know that people are involved in other serious criminal activity, we will charge them at higher levels. If they're stealing things of high value, we will charge them at higher levels. And if the police inform us that someone is a prolific offender, or if we can see that on the criminal record, we will charge them at higher levels. I would like to tell you that solves all the problems, but it never has, it never will, and it doesn't now. Here's the reality. We had one guy who had something like 50, I think it was maybe 56, retail theft cases. We prosecuted him as a felony. We put him in state prison. He completed his state sentence. I think he did all 2 years on that thing. And he then came out and did it again, okay? That's the reality. We are selective about using higher levels to prosecute, but we use it where appropriate. And it's not going to be a solution for someone who has acute... I just told you, we put him in jail for 2 years, and then he came out and did it again. So in terms of what you asked me, we prosecute all of them, but we use a level of judgment about whether it is a first offender or it is somebody who's stealing something of high value or someone who's doing a lot of thefts. Now, as I said, I believe there's another part of this that's been ignored for my entire career since 1987, which is going after the fences who are making all the money and making more money than ever, because the internet is just a wonderful way to clean stolen goods. And I would like to be able to do that as well. I think if we do the two of them at the same time, we can make some real progress.
Can I have somebody from the police department tell me how many cases of retail theft, how many people have we arrested for retail theft in the last 12 months?
State your name, please, for the record.
Danielle Outlaw, Police Commissioner. Madam Councilwoman, we'll have to get back to you with that number. I have a number for narcotics arrests and total arrests, but I don't have the specific retail number for the last year.
DA Krasner, do you know how many arrests have been made? Or how many people have you charged?
We've charged everybody that the police have sent us where there's probable cause. Probably 99% of those cases had probable cause. We charge them with summary, which is a crime and can put you in jail for up to 90 days, or a misdemeanor, or with a felony, which is the highest level of crimes. It depends on the situation. There's a very small number, the data is clear, there's a very small number who are the prolific offenders, and they deserve to be charged at high levels. There are people.
The problem is not the prolific offender. It's the fact that everybody thinks it's okay to walk into these businesses and load a bag up and walk out. So it becomes, that is why we're seeing all of these businesses shut down. It's not just about one specific group of people. And I can't figure out, I can't get an answer from anybody, because you ask one group of folks, how many arrests are happening here? In this particular footprint, I can't get an answer. How many people have been charged? How many people have actually gone to jail? And I can't ever get that response.
Well, I think I am answering you respectfully, council member. I have made clear many times, and frankly, if someone asked me for this data, I would have brought it, but I made clear many times that our rate of charging the cases, with few exceptions, that are brought to us by the police department is extremely high. It is much higher than other jurisdictions. We actually charge gun possession cases at a higher rate than my predecessor. It's about 98, 99%. And when we don't charge it, it's only because, no, it's not a lie, that's actually the truth. When we don't do it, it's only because there's a flaw in the case. There's not probable cause, or there's a clearly illegal search or something that's going to nullify it. We charge all of the retail theft cases that are sent to us where there's probable cause, there's not an obvious basis for suppression. It's about 99%.
There seems to be a disconnect between the police department and the district attorney's office as it relates to the process or the policies or the procedures that are put in place to get someone from being arrested in the community and actually being charged. Can you tell me what you all are doing together to be able to rectify that issue, right? If you are seeing that cases are being brought in front of your ADAs and there is certain type of information that is not brought to you appropriately or that is missing, what are you all doing to work together to actually fix that so that it doesn't continuously happen? What's happening? Are you guys talking? Are you meeting?
So as you answer that question, specifically, the number of arrests, the number of charges, the number of convictions, not a 99% of what?
Are the numbers.
Yeah, what are the numbers?
So I would be happy to answer that. We have arguably the best data lab in the United States for a DA's office, but I can't answer it in my head. I have to be informed of that in advance. I'll be happy to get you those numbers later if you would like to have them. But I will give you in general what I think they're going to show. What I think they're going to show is that we charge essentially every retail theft case either as a summary, a misdemeanor, or a felony. It is not going to show a situation where there's a high percent of cases we are rejecting. The vast majority of the retail theft cases that come to us at probably a 98 or 99% level are adequate. They are properly investigated. The police have conducted themselves in the right way, okay? As for the conviction rate, the truth about this, since 1987, is that most of these cases involve a loss prevention officer, someone who is an eyewitness, and most of the time they don't show up. Or that you have owners, and who need to come in to say that this was owned by the store, or the loss prevention officer will say it was owned by the store and it was taken by Joe and I caught Joe at the door. A lot of times these businesses, big or small, don't produce the witness.
So how many?
I don't have, as I said.
So I'm not being.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, for the record, I'd like to make sure that we recognize that we've asked this question in budget hearings. We asked this question the last time we were here, and we are still at the same place. And so when do we get the answers that we need? This community is suffering.
If I had a communication 24 hours ago, you'd have it right now. That's all you need to do. I'd be happy to do that, and I say that respectfully to you. If you tell me I want these numbers, I can run Kensington-specific numbers as well. I have done this for many council members. A lot of you know that I've put packets in your hand.
We asked for them during budget hearings.
So can we, all right, we're not going to get that answer this moment, but can we ask both the police commissioner and the district attorney to provide to the chair so we can provide to our respective members those specific numbers? Because we can disagree about philosophy of what we should do, but numbers don't tell a fib. And we just need to quantify what direction our policy is and whether we should reconsider it. Like, that's quantified. And listen, I understand about whales and memos, and I think going after the big warehouse full of Tide is where we want to go. I want them dealt with. I want to cut the head of the snake off. However, I met a guy outside who really is contemplating closing his store because he just routinely gets robbed. And not with a gun, just by the mere fact that somebody comes and shops for the people down at the tavern. We have to address it.
Well, and I also want to make a note that there's always conversation about certain things not getting into certain people's hands appropriately, right? Or they're incomplete, or there's something missing. We've talked about recruitment and retention, right, earlier today. And so I think that what I also want us to think about is, do we need to have your office come to the training center where you all are talking to these new recruits about, this is the information that we need in order to get us from point A to Z when an individual is brought in front of you because they've obstructed the law? Is that a possibility? Does that happen now?
So let me just say this. Either I or my designee, but I think about 85% of the time, I have spoken to every new class of police cadets at the invitation of usually the Guardian Civic League about how to stay out of trouble, how to do the right thing, how not to jeopardize their career. I've done that myself, and I think that's really important. We would be happy to do any additional trainings that the Philadelphia Police Department would like us to do. And I can think of an area where we might be of help. This is no criticism at all to the police department, but we want to help. And that area has to do with some of the law that has changed on searching cars and some of the law that has changed on searching a person for a gun. Maybe that's somewhere where we could be of assistance. We do, we do work weekly with the, or it depends on how often they do it, but we work all the time on the shooting reviews, working through with PPD about which cases are perfect, which cases are less perfect, where it is that we can do something can be done better. We do that kind of stuff all the time. But in terms of speaking at roll calls or speaking to new cadets who are in the academy, we would be happy to do any additional trainings that the commissioner thought was appropriate. I don't think it's my job to tell her what to do, and I know that she doesn't think it's her job to tell me what to do, but we are very open to any request the commissioner may have to do additional trainings at their suggestion.
My last question is, we have a mini station that is just dedicated to Kensington. What are the possibilities of you assigning an ADA or ADAs to that particular station to assist officers in when they're making arrests, when they have questions, when they are on the ground and are trying to figure out whether they're doing things appropriately? Is that something that we could look at or that we would consider?
Well, yes, we would consider it. You know, there was a time before the pandemic when we did something a little different. It was copied from a model in Chicago that had proven effective, and that was that we had some of our homicide ADAs, some of our shooting ADAs, who were assigned to certain areas where there were high levels of gun violence to assist detectives. Philly does things a little differently than Chicago. Detectives at that time were the ones we wanted to work with because we thought we might be of use to them in terms of drafting an affidavit of probable cause for an arrest warrant or a search warrant, things like that. If we are funded for it, we are entirely open to that. We are not currently funded for that, and we would never just break in. We need an invitation from our friends at the police department, but we would certainly be open to that, and we have in the past had people who were assigned either to the DIVIC, which of course is in some ways the intelligence center for the police department. We had a permanent seat there for a while, or we have had people who are working directly with detectives on the more serious cases. Now, obviously, a mini station will have a variety of cases. They're not all going to be the most serious cases, but we're open to it. Yeah, I think the more coordination, the more closeness, the more proximity, the more working together, the better. And I think our homicide unit, which works closely with PPD on investigations, is an example of how that's a good idea.
Can we work towards that moving forward? Can we agree to move towards that, moving forward? Who needs to say yes? Can we agree that you two will work, the police department and the DA's office will work much more closer together in when it comes to arresting, charging, and getting us to the end of the line from A to Z? And can we also figure out how we agree to have a district attorney be at the Kensington mini station to be able to provide support to officers when they're conducting these investigations and arrests?
So my
Who
ans-
needs to make that decision?
I mean, my answer is if you fund it and if the PPD invites me, because I'm not going to invade their lane, then we're happy to do that. I think that the truth is people do not understand how closely the PPD and the DA's office work all the time when it comes to these major drug investigations, when it comes to homicide investigations. Even at the charging phase, what happens is if we get a case and we think something more is needed, we don't just say no. We say to them, please go get me this. Please take this person caught in the stolen car, please take their photograph back to the person who got carjacked 2 days ago, and let's see if they will identify this person as being the carjacker, right? That kind of coordination goes on all the time. It's not public, but it goes on all the time. And in general, I have to tell you, I think that a lot of the detectives do an amazing job, and I think the PPD is very responsive when we tell them that there's something that we don't have. So that is happening all the time, but as I said, I'm a big believer that the more we work together, the better, and I'm open to any suggestions. So long as we're funded to do it, we'll do it.
Yes, ma'am. And we would love to have embedded DAs again.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Chair recognizes Member Harity.
I'm sorry, I was a little, and I actually don't even have a question, I just have a request. When you're putting those numbers together for us, if you could please give us also numbers on how many cases are dismissed because of either ADA not prepared, officer not showing up, witnesses not showing up, whatever it is. It's not to point out it's just to figure out where the disconnect is. So I'd like to see some numbers on how many cases are actually dismissed or actually followed through all the way through the process.
Yes, sir. Council member, are you talking about all kinds of cases, or are we talking about specific category cases?
Let's stick with the retail.
Yeah, I would like to see everything.
Okay. All right. We're happy to do that.
Okay, are you done, Member Harity?
I am.
Chair recognizes Member Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that we're having a discussion about the appropriate ways to enforce as it relates to shoplifting so that we can stop the harm that's happening to small businesses. And that's obviously a very important discussion that needs to be resolved. But I also wanted to bring in the Commerce Department to talk about other ways that we may be able to support these businesses. During COVID, for example, which was a crisis, and I consider this to be a crisis, we actually got money to support small businesses that were impacted by the shutdown and impacted by the lack of street foot traffic. Since we're similarly in a crisis that is impacting small businesses to the point where they're closing and leaving, would we consider a program from the Commerce Department to support the small businesses in Kensington specifically until we can get a handle on what's going on? And by support, I mean support to their revenue so that what's going on doesn't force them to close.
Is there a representative from the Commerce Department? Please state your name for the record and respond to the member's question. Don't run.
Hi, everyone. Karen Fegley, Deputy Commerce Director.
Dennis Murphy, Deputy Commerce Director.
Thank you. Please respond.
I mean, general response is we're always open to exploring something like this.
Pull the mic a little closer, please.
Sorry. We're always open to exploring ways to assist businesses. In the Kensington area, over the past few years, one of the things we offered was free security cameras, something we've done in other parts of the city as well as our, just regular resources that we offer to all small businesses. We partner with Impact in New Kensington to support them. But as has been discussed here, the challenges in Kensington are unlike anywhere else in the city. Yeah. And so, we're open to any and all resolutions.
I just think, we do a lot of meaningful work across the city, but I just think one thing we have to be good at or better at is mobilizing to address a crisis when a crisis is happening and offering a different and more intense level of support when and where a crisis is happening. And so if the small businesses in Kensington are so under siege that they are being forced to close or they're leaving, I would say that that would demand a different level of response from the city, from us, right? And I think that we should offer a more intense level of support in addition to the enforcement strategies that we're undertaking.
So as a part of the Kensington Marshall Plan, there should be a commerce small loan, small grant component. Grant.
Like during COVID, I know a lot of that money was federal money, some of it was state money, but this is as dire, right? This is as dire for Kensington as COVID was to the entire city. And so I think we should be considering supporting these small businesses because the community needs them to be here, right? So I hope we would consider something like that.
So can we, as a subset of this group, consider Member Goodyear's recommendation, which is that we mobilize resources, federal, state, or local, to assist some of these businesses that we've heard about that are devastated by this condition?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We'll do that again. I'll make sure we bring in New Kensington and Impact, who are our boots on the ground and meeting. They talk to the businesses every day. They know what the issues are. And I'll just add, you're right. With COVID, our response from the city, from Commerce's perspective, is we jumped into action right away. We gave very small grants that we considered lifelines until the federal funds kicked in with the PPP and the larger, longer-term financial supports. All of COVID was still shorter than the effects that the businesses in Kensington are dealing with. And so considering what a long-term solution is going to be is something we'd have to really take a look at. Yeah, thanks.
So we'll look for your thoughts, cameras, lighting, anything that can contribute to the safety of their operation. Even security audits. And money. Are you done? Yes. Member Goodyear. Chair recognizes Member Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. DA, I'm going to go into the more of the, preventative or diversionary programs. We worked really hard together on coming up with AMP Court and with the DA's office, Defenders Association, the police department, and municipal court, and got it up and running. And it was 2 days a week starting last September, I think it started. And eventually it was going to move up to 5 days a week. Would you be willing to sit down with the Defenders Association and myself to go over, see what is needed to make that happen, and do you believe it can happen? To help with diversionary programs for the people who are eligible for that court.
Council member, first of all, I appreciate your comments and your passion about people who are on the street and who are unfortunately so addicted to drugs that they're at risk of killing themselves, and the inadequacies with our current law around mental health commitments and around commitments for people who are essentially close to dying as a result of their behavior. You and I have had that conversation. In fact, we had that conversation with another person because I find it very frustrating as well. There are other countries that do better with that. than we do. It is, in my mind, a great tragedy that we have the number of fatal overdoses in Philadelphia County and across the country that we have. Coming back to your issue, I'm a big supporter of AMP. AMP has been around for many years, and you have been one of its champions. It got shut down during the pandemic like everything else got shut down. But like you, I would like to see AMP 5 days a week. I would be happy to sit down with you and talk to you about that. I can tell you that the public defender, who in my mind is doing a truly excellent job, is facing staffing issues, just like the sheriff, just like the police department, just as we have at certain times. And so there have been times, even before this public defender, when there were staffing issues. I am committed to staffing 5 days a week with current resources. We could always use more, but I'm committed to that, and I'm happy to sit down with you and sit down with the public defender to talk about what we can do to support that.
All right, that's great, because I think we, as we talk about, there's a lot of different things that we could do, and that's just one thing. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's a way to get some help for folks that are on the street that I think we could hopefully steer them in the right direction. So I would love maybe we set that up next week and get down and figure out how to do that. Thank you.
I'm happy to do that, and I do want to just make one comment, something that I remember former Commissioner Richard Ross saying, which is that the solutions usually are not in one part. It's usually layer after layer of programs that are good. Each one is going to take a little bite out of the problem. This is one of those things that will take a little bite out of the problem. Obviously, it hasn't solved it, and it has been around for years, but it's positive. It pushes in the right direction. If we can just come with 13, 14, 15 little changes, new approaches, and put them all together, that to me is where the solution lies. It's not just one thing, it's a whole bunch of things.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and we appreciate having these difficult conversations so that we can come up with consensus, and I think we're getting there. So what I want to do is let my members of the committee know we are approaching 8:30, and we have an ambitious group of next panelists, and so if there are no other questions for this group, is there? Okay. Can we, Mr. Cohen, bring up the last group?
Yes.
To testify.
We're going to call all the remaining witnesses together at the same time. So Charles Lawson, Chief of SEPTA Transit Police, Lisa Dealey, Chairwoman of the City Commissioners, Keisha Hudson, Chief Public Defender, Karen Lynch, and Kevin Bethel, the School District of Philadelphia.
Thank you all for your patience. Please come up, and we will attempt to look for solutions within your area of expertise. Welcome, thank you. If I could I start with the Chief Defender? How many cases have you defended regarding retail theft in the area of Kensington?
I did not bring retail theft numbers. What I will say, we understand that a very small number of people are responsible for a very large proportion of retail thefts. And when I say small number, 22 people for 70% of the retail thefts. That's not specific to Kensington.
Can you repeat that for
22 single people for 70% of retail thefts. That is just one data pull that we did. I can come back with councilmanic data. I did not come prepared for data about Kensington.
All right, we are sitting here shocked that number is so low.
Is it because they're not arrested, or is it because people just let them do whatever they want to do, or is it they don't come into the system?
Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender, for the record, I will say for those who are not familiar with what we do, we are the agency appointed to represent people who are arrested and charged with crimes, both youth and adults. We also have a unique practice where we represent the children who are in the dependency system in the city of Philadelphia. We are appointed because people cannot afford an attorney, and so from the very reason for our constitutional existence, our constitutionally mandated existence, is that if you are arrested and charged with a criminal offense, you are constitutionally entitled to an attorney, and so that's where we come in. My clients, we do something that is very unique, and it's called mitigation. We have attorney-client privilege, and our clients will tell us things that they don't tell their mothers, they don't tell their fathers, and when a client walks through the door, we go back generations. The issues that the clients that we have in Kensington are facing are not, are multi-generational. We're talking drug abuse, housing instability, job insecurity, poor education, and that is the reason they walk through the doors. And for every client that I represent, and when we have a mitigation specialist assigned to the case, we can tell you every missed intervention before they picked up a needle, before they sold drugs, before they picked up a gun, before they fired a gun. And there are a lot of missed interventions in the very fabric of their very disinvested communities, in the lack of affordable quality housing, in the lack of education, missed opportunities in the school environment, and missed interventions for mental health and drug addiction. We represent 70% of clients who are arrested in Philadelphia. 40% of them have a mental diagnosis. That's 40%.
Could you repeat that again?
40% are diagnosed with a mental illness. Drug addiction is a mental illness, and I understand that people think these are choices, and the frustration from the community regarding what this looks like and how this impacts them. But I was very also happy to hear the testimony of the community member to talk about what her child witnesses or what her community witnesses, because these are, I have to tell you, in another 60 years, that child who's walking by and stepping over a needle and or exposed to watching deep trauma is going to be my client. And unless we do something different, we cannot arrest and prosecute and incarcerate our way out of this problem. It is a playbook that has never worked. I don't watch sports, so I can't believe I'm going to do this, but if we are playing a football game and the same moves aren't getting you the win, you don't keep using the same moves. That's as close as I'll ever get to a football analogy, right? We have to come up with something different, and that's a trauma-informed approach for both the community residents. So it's that child who is walking by and seeing someone inject, who is experiencing deep trauma, but it's also my client who once was that child, who has experienced deep trauma. And my clients are poor, they are Black. Just to talk about specific numbers in Kensington, 53% of our Kensington clients are Hispanic, 36% are Black, and 11% are white. We are talking about Black and brown bodies, and we're going to have this conversation again in another 50 years if we have not done something different. Investments in policing are important. Investment in prosecution and in the judiciary is important. I'm asking for investment in my organization, and I'm very thankful to City Council because they have made that investment. So this is how we are using our budget allocation. Our dependency unit, the majority of our children in our child welfare system in the dependency unit come from this district. I don't think that we can divorce the issue of Philadelphia leading the nation in the separation of children from their families, Kensington leading the city in the separation of children from their families, and say that that has no correlation to what we're seeing now, because it does. And our data shows that 1 in 4 of our children who are in the dependency system are picking up guns and or committing other crimes in the delinquency system. Our office, the child advocacy unit sits on the 9th floor. They will have a file on the client, and then they walk up to the 10th floor because the Children and Youth Justice Unit also have a file on that client. That client, because of missed interventions and lack of resources in our organization, did not allow us to prevent that child from making a choice that negatively impacted them, the family, and the community. So we're taking a deep look at what we do in our child welfare practice, but we have to prioritize the preservation and reunification of Black and brown families. It is a source of deep trauma when you rip a child from their home. Even a drug-addicted parent can be a good parent. They can get treatment and they can be reunified with their child, because that child experiencing that trauma is going to be my delinquent juvenile or my adult client. 1 in 4 of our dependent kids pick up a delinquent petition. 1 in 5 of our adults had a dependency petition. So how we're using our budget allocation this year, we are focusing on older youth. We are increasing social services to focus on the 13 and over population, who, if they're in group placement or foster care, no one wants to adopt. No one wants a 13-year-old Black boy. He's not going to get adopted. The 8-month-old cute kid is going to get adopted, not my 13, 14, or 15-year-olds. And they need supports wrapped around them and our arms wrapped around them. So we're increasing social service supports, focusing on older youth. We're hiring, with our budget allocation, 4 peer mentors that we will be paying $40,000 each. These peer mentors have been through the dependency system. They know what it's like. They can help us work with our clients on ways we can help them. We are also increasing our social services to do more of a case management support. Right now, we do a light touch. We tell our clients, go to community legal services for your public benefits or go to these other social service agencies. The bureaucracy and the amount of administrative work that our clients have to do to navigate services is a challenge we have to overcome. When they have a 5th grade reading level and they have other issues that they're struggling with, to have them go to 15 different agencies to be able to say, I need help with this issue or that issue, they cannot do it. So instead of our social workers giving a referral, we are moving towards a model where we're pairing the social workers. They're with them for that first year, that first 2 years or 3 years, and working with them to make deep connections and deep supports. You asked about solutions, and so I'm just going to read off the 4 that we recommend. We recommend prioritizing justice system-involved adults and their families for social services, including housing, workforce development, substance use, and mental health treatment. We have to ensure all children and families who reside in areas of high levels of community violence have immediate access to culturally appropriate trauma treatment, invested in neighborhood-based culturally appropriate services, especially housing, and reshaping policies which govern the best interest of the child to acknowledge the harm imposed upon them by separation from their families and neighborhoods. Thank you.
I gotta tell you that I am a fan. And I'm a fan for a number of reasons. One, you're one of the only agencies I know that can see a problem coming from the juvenile point of view when you are representing them, often as their advocate, a custody case, and you can identify somebody that really needs the help. And then, unfortunately, when we don't provide that help, they are the defendant, please rise, as an adult. If you listen to what she talked about, she's punching way over her budget. You don't get funded to do, or at least I don't know about it, some of the things that you, in your case management style, you are a defender. You could define your job as in the courtroom, in the advocacy role, and then after that decision is made, see you next time. Right. But that's not what you do. No. And I am a fan because of it. It is holistic in its approach. So you had 4 recommendations. Would you please repeat them for us?
Prioritizing justice system involved adults and families for social services, including housing, workforce development, substance use and mental health treatment, ensuring all children and families, not just justice involved children and families, all children and families in areas of high levels of community violence have immediate access to trauma-informed treatment. We have to invest in neighborhood-based, culturally appropriate services, especially housing, mental health and substance abuse treatment for children and their families in the dependency and delinquency systems, reshaping policies which govern the best interest of the child to acknowledge the harm imposed upon them by separation from their families and neighborhoods.
Members of the committee, are questions? Member Harity.
I don't per se have a question as much as, well, if I can get the button to come on. I'm glad to hear that you're talking about what I have been talking about. And, you know, you're talking about being a front line for our children. You know, if we get it early enough, we can treat it and dismiss it, because I've always said that these kids that we're not treating the trauma that they're seeing, they are going to be the addicts and the criminals of tomorrow. And, you know, that doesn't sit right with me, because every kid should have a chance to be a kid, to enjoy life and think about things that, you know, have things that are fun not thinking about what the kids in my neighborhood here in Kensington have to think about. You know, I live block up the street, and I encourage anybody who hasn't rode past there at G and Allegheny on that little corridor between Allegheny and Westmoreland. It's only a block. I encourage you to take a ride past. I would not get out and stop, but I would take a ride past, and, you know, me and my wife and Ketsy walk that corridor all the time by ourselves. And we are willing to stand out there, right, Councilwoman? With anybody in this room that wants to come out and walk it with us to see what we have to see daily and what our kids have to see. So, I mean, I'm a big component of trauma services for our children. I mean, what the kids in this neighborhood see on a daily basis just on their way to school is traumatizing. And we need to be better. We need to be better as a council. We need to be better as a city. You know, and hopefully we can get some money over there so that we can actually start trying the thing. But it's also, you know, I'm a numbers guy like some of us up here are. And, you know, I heard an amazing statistic. In Pennsylvania, we have one child psychiatrist for every 10,000 children. Now, it's a little better here in Philadelphia because we are a big city, but that's just ridiculous. How is one person supposed to see 10,000 people? It just can't happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Members, are there any other questions? Well, I mean, like I said, I'm a fan. We need to do more to reinforce what your staff do for the city of Philadelphia, so thank you. Thank you for your service. Can we agree? I'd like to go to SEPTA next.
Can I say one thing?
Oh,
Mr.
yeah, I'm
Chair?
sorry,
Yes.
Member Squilla.
Also, too, I want to say that, and I want to thank the Defenders Association for their work with AMP. It's really important to have everybody on all sides understanding the benefits of that court, which gives people an alternative. And one question, do you think with your current staffing, you would be able to do 5 days a week?
We believe we could, yes.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Squilla. SEPTA, state your name and please begin your recommendations.
Thank you, Chairman Jones.
Put the mic a little closer.
My name is Chuck Lawson, Chief of the SEPTA Police Department, and I am flanked by our Chief Operating Officer, Scott Sauer. We submitted our testimony. I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to jump right to our recommendations. I will say that I'm very pleased that Council is focused so intently on talk of summer and quality of life issues. No discussion about our approach to security and safety on SEPTA is accurate without at least saying that we focus a tremendous amount of effort on quality of life issues on SEPTA. Historically, and I've been with the police department for 30 years, we know that it tends to keep violent crime down. We've been dealing with more violent crime as of late, but the fact remains that our focus on summary offenses has served us very well over the years. To put that in perspective, we are aggressively enforcing quality of life issues. Just some numbers over the Kensington corridor. That's 4 stations through Kensington.
Can you, for the record, name those stations?
Certainly. So we're dealing with Huntington, Somerset, Allegheny, and Tioga. Those 4 stations. We have enforced 362 quality of life offenses just this year to date.
Repeat that.
362 summary offenses to date, year to date.
Can you, for the benefit of the public, define what a quality of life offense is?
Sure. So they're low-level issues dealing with like open alcohol use, possession of narcotics, smoking, other code of conduct issues, that behavior that we don't want on the system, safety issues, loitering, blocking public transit ways, things like that. So just those 4 stations, almost 400 offenses that we've.
And what period of time does this cover?
January to year to date, to the present time.
So that's 6 months?
That's correct, from January 1 through June 30th.
Continue.
Yep. So one of the things that we're willing to do also is to ban individuals for repeated violations. So if an individual engages in some summary of life violation, code of conduct violation on SEPTA, they do that 4 times in the span of 1 year, we will ban them from SEPTA. And we have now engaged in 17 bans just over those 4 stations as well, year to date. And that's more than half of the bans that we have year to date over the rest of SEPTA. One of the things that we're willing to do in those 4 stations across SEPTA, we have more resources deployed than any 4-station area over the rest of SEPTA, over all of SEPTA's 200+ stations. More policing resources, more outreach worker resources, more security resources, and more cleaning resources just over that 4 stretch. Because frankly, we need it, and we recognize that. You know, we engaged in a pilot last year in terms of cleaning and really deep cleaning SEPTA stations. We've done 2 of those efforts over the Kensington stations this year. We have another station in Tioga scheduled for this weekend coming up. So we'll close the station down. We hate to impact the community to that extent, but it requires the level of concentration that we need to do to clean those areas and provide, the level of service to our customer that we want to provide. I'll go through just another list of things that we have most recently implemented or are in the process of implementing. All of these are relatively new efforts. So increase in staffing along the Market-Frankfurt line, along the east end of the Market-Frankfurt line. That started in March. So we added more police officers to that section. We're seeing a rebound in recruitment. I'm very happy to report. We just graduated a class of 21 recruits. To put that in perspective, the last 4 academy classes that we put in the academy, 5 or less.
How many vacancies?
So we're dealing with about just over 30. There's 32 vacancies right now. That number's down from 70 as much as 7 months ago. So we hired 50 police officers in the last 12 months. So as I said, that graduating class is coming out now. That's going to enable us, in terms of real officer numbers, to dedicate another 6 to 8 officers across every shift in the Kensington corridor. That number will probably drop a little bit over the weekend, but that's a real number that we're now contributing every weekday. We have created the virtual patrol. That was born out of some of the staffing issues we experienced years ago. What we've signed now is any one virtual patrol operator behind a camera can pull up to 6, 7 stations, right? So now we have eyes on multiple stations where I can only put a police officer at one station at a time. We now have eyes on a number of stations.
Did I understand you to say you have 1 police officer, SEPTA police, at each station?
No, whereas I can only put 1 or 2 officers at a station at a time on any given moment, I can pull up cameras at 6, 7, 8 stations. So we're multiplying the area, the situational awareness that we have of what's going on SEPTA at any given time. It's a force multiplier for our virtual patrol group.
So in order to cover those 4, so is there a higher level of criminal activity at those 4 stations?
There are. I will tell you that year to date, we have exactly 6 serious crimes over those 4 stations year to date. That number's down by 50% or more. So we're seeing some of these strategies that we implemented working. But the fact remains that our customers are not complaining about serious crime day in and day out. They're complaining about the conditions that they see at our stations, on board our trains. That's what we're focused on trying to impact with these quality of life enforcement efforts.
Do you have statistics on the ridership at those 4 stations?
I don't. We can get true numbers by station.
I got the chair of transportation right here. He wants to know.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have those raw numbers. We can get them. We have them. We aggregate that monthly, so we can get that to you.
Thank you.
Just ask, what's the starting salary for a SEPTA police officer?
I think it's now close to 70,000.
Say that again?
Close to 70. It's in the upper
And
60s.
I guess that would be the reason why you're only down 30 officers and you're down 1,300 officers, or 900. Yep. Goes to my point. They need a raise.
So just allowing me to finish just a couple of other things that we've implemented. We've hired some civilian data analysts now, so we're looking weekly at measuring statistics through that corridor. Every week I get a report on measuring our key performance indicators through that area, some of the reports, the statistics that I read off to you. We have a fantastic partnership with our partners at PPD. We have started conducting joint sweeps now in the Kensington and Allegheny area. We established that about a month ago. That's going well. I hope we can expand that. But that's conducted twice a day with the members of the Philadelphia Police Department. And of course, partnering with them with more serious issues. You've heard some statistics put out by Philadelphia on the recent narcotics efforts in East Division. We partnered with them on that effort, and we'll continue to do so in the future.
So no open-air drug dealing on your platforms?
I'd be lying to you if I said that was not occurring. We are absolutely dealing with a much bigger issue of possession and use. We find discarded needles by the bucket loads throughout our system. Use is a major, major issue for us. We have some absolutely targeted hotspots where distribution's going on, but by and large, it's possession and use is our problem. And then just a couple final things. We've engaged in an end-of-line initiative, so it's very difficult for us, right? You're asking police officers to identify homelessness. You can't. If you're asking police officers to identify who, by look, is a narcotics user, you can't. We're going to get into trouble when we do that, right? So we police behavior and activity. So we can't, in many circumstances, determine who's paying a fare to get on, right? So when they're on our trains, we have to assume that they paid to get on. What we do enforce is you pay a fare, one fare, you go to the end of the line, you want to ride again, you pay a second fare. And so what we've adapted to is look, homelessness, there are folks who are engaged in, who have shelter facilities, right, for sleeping. They use SEPTA as sort of a day shelter, right, a place to get out of the weather during the day. That's where our trouble area is. They want to stay on the train, so we've adapted to that by establishing a police presence at our end of lines on the Mark Frankfurt line of Broad Street so that we can enforce, all right, you rode the system down, you want to get on again, you got to pay a fare. And if you don't, you're off. We are, as I said, we will remove folks, aggressively remove folks from our system for engaged behavior that we don't want. Year to date, and again, just over the Kensington corridor, year to date, we have removed 10,801 individuals for violating some section of our code of conduct or engaging in a crime on SEPTA.
All right, I'm going to need you to repeat that for the record.
Yep, so removals over those four stations I mentioned are 10,801 from the period of January 1st through June 30th.
I'm stunned. All right.
Without a CVN or without a...
In most cases, they receive a summary violation ticket, but we will remove without a ticket for engaging in non-criminal violation of our code of conduct.
What's an example of that?
Get your mic.
Yep. So if you're lying down in a concourse on SEPTA, or you're sleeping on the train, you're laid out, you're taking up multiple seats with many belongings, those are things that will engage an individual on, tell them they can't do, try to see if they want to accept services, and if they refuse, we remove them from the system.
Thank you.
So are many of these individuals, the 10,000, repeat offenders?
They are. Yeah, unfortunately, they are, and that's who we're focused on, right? Like our summary enforcement efforts are created with the idea of identifying the smaller number of repeat offenders, right? Because once you're banned from SEPTA, if you return, while the ban is in effect, we're willing and we do arrest for criminal trespass. Now it's a misdemeanor. Now it has a little more bite.
Okay. Any questions for SEPTA? Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you're doing for this community. Do you have analysis of your ridership at those 4 stations? Are they students going back and forth to school, people going back and forth to work during rush hour or non-traditional times? Do you have that kind of data?
Yes. Yes, we do have that data. I don't have it handy, but we do, and anecdotally, I can tell you it's a mix. When school's in session, we see a lot of students. When it's not, we see run-of-the-mill commuters going back and forth to work, shopping trips, what have you. So it is a mix at most of those stations.
Any stats on night shift hours?
Yes, we can disseminate the data in all sorts of the 4 stations, nighttime, daytime. I'll work on that and we can get that over to you.
Member Lozada.
I just want to, for the record, I want to say thank you to the chief and to Wendy and the SEPTA team. I met with them last week about some of the issues that are reported to my office on a consistent basis around the platforms and around trash. And while they didn't make it to our walkthrough today, they have committed to partnering with us and joining our pilot efforts of 24-hour cleaning. And so we met today, we've created a plan, we've picked a footprint, we'll make sure that we share that with you all, and we look forward to seeing some really positive outcomes from that. So thank you.
Again, emphasis on thank you. We appreciate your effort. Are there any other questions for this testifier? Next, we'll do Commissioner Deely, who has been very, very patient.
Good evening, Chairperson Jones and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. In light of everybody's time, I will just summarize my written testimony, which was already sent in yesterday. We appreciate all your efforts to enhance the quality of life of the constituents in Kensington who battle every day for safety in their community. And we are eager to work with Council to improve the quality of life and increase access to voting services to the residents of Kensington and increase the voter participation rate, which is the goal that we have for the whole city. I would like to see us hire more bilingual staff, and we are working to fill a Spanish language access and engagement specialist position so that we can have a greater presence in the community and register more people to vote. But I'm not going to lie, we are not the silver bullet. The low voter participation is a symptom of the underlying cause of the issue. Because of the crime and open-air drug use, residents are afraid to leave their homes or let their kids play outside. So we run into the same problems that any other city department runs into when providing services to these constituents. I think that we need to look at issues from all perspectives to find the best course of action. We all come to this issue with a personal bias. We all love an addict or love someone that loves an addict. Love and sympathy can cloud our approach to addressing this. We need to remember the people who are living here and how it affects them. Kensington is more than the problems we see in headlines. It is home to many longtime residents who cannot let their children play outside or walk to school. I am here to tell you that the City Commissioner's Office appreciates the absolute attention that this committee has paid to this very important issue, and we look forward to working with you to increase access to voting services to the residents of Kensington and increase the voter participation rate, which is the goal we have for the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Question, in this area, is voter turnout higher or lower? Lower. And in this community, how do we make the connection to voter education so that we can increase that turnout? And I guess my final question would be, how many polling places are we established in this area to make it more convenient to walk fewer steps to get to participate?
Well, for your last question, I'll have to get you that information. I'll look at the wards and the divisions and give you the count on the polling places. But we face that same problem when we're looking to put drop boxes, satellite offices, polling places. We have to take everything into account, with regard to the health and safety of the people that are working the polls. Although we don't have a problem in this area of recruiting election board workers, participation is very low. So, for instance, it was well publicized in 2020, the general election, when we were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. We were able to secure a $10 million grant to help us conduct that election. And one of the things we were able to do was we opened 17 satellite election offices around the city, including one at Julio de Burgos and one at Mastbaum. Julio de Burgos was one of the first to open in the city. In addition, we spent over $700,000 on a bilingual advertising campaign, which included radio, TV, social media, all kinds of bus wraps, truck wraps. We advertised all over the radio, but sadly, the Julio de Burgos satellite office was the least utilized office in the city. Although it helped increase mail voting participation in the area surrounding the school, the participation was low. People were coming from other satellite offices by bus to go to Julio de Burgos because they knew that they wouldn't have to anticipate a line. So we know that the participation level is low here for the same reasons. So we would like to be able to engage more with the community and come out to more events and be as proactive with you as we possibly can.
We're sitting here shocked, Commissioner, please, but we just got news that 6 people were shot in the 25th district, which emphasizes why there is a crisis and why this demands attention. Are there any questions for the Commissioner? No? All right. We have one other agency to testify, and that's the school district. Thank you, Commissioner. State your name.
So good evening.
Good evening. Thank you
Kev-
for your
Kev-
patience.
Yeah, I don't have any. I won't be testifying per se. I know for the issue of time. My name is Kevin Bethel. I'm the chief of school safety. I'm here with Chief Karen Lynch, who will introduce herself, but since I got the mic, who runs our support services. So I just really want to emphasize, I think in our last session we were here. First and foremost, I have to extend my appreciation to the police department. The work that we've done down in this corridor would not have been able to be able to do that without the team here supporting us on it every day. As you know, my men and women are not armed, so we rely heavily on them. But the last time I was here, the conversation came about Safe Path and our need for additional funding. I'm not sure if that came out of this budget cycle or not, but recognizing that it may not, we looked at a grant that we had, and we'll be able to reprogram some funds. We have dedicated all, we look at when we started our Safe Path program, it was really targeted toward schools where we were seeing a lot of shooting violence outside of our schools. We made a pivot most recently to say, looking at our schools in our opioid corridors, that their demand is even higher than that because of what they're seeing on a daily basis. And so we are moving forward with getting as many of the internal dollars as we can to start to expand our Safe Path program in this area. And I will tell people, this is I worked this area 20 years ago, and it wasn't like this. So let's
Say that again?
So I don't want to hear those 60-year conversation. 20 years ago, when I was down here, we're doing Operation Sunrise and Sunset. We're doing all kinds of activity, and it was challenging. But it never, ever, ever was what I see our kids come through today. Let me give you an example. At Willard's, yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us, in your expert opinion, why? Why are we here?
Because we were, first and foremost, we don't talk about it, but there are multi-million-dollar drug corners down here. Some of those corners are owned by 4 different people who sell 4 different products. You could sit there and talk about a wire, I did wires down here. I did all of that stuff. I could do a wire tomorrow and take a group out, and guess what? There'll be another group back there the next day. Part of the work was about enforcement. And I listen, and all of you up there know I do a balanced approach. I truly believe in the restorative work, but at the end of the day, when those comments are said, when I walk down this, let me give you an example. I was in Willard School has been shot up 3 times. Willard School across the street. The last time we had a shooting was on Jasper Street where the bullet went into the classroom. The kids had just left the classroom a half an hour before that. Do you realize I have bulletproof blankets on windows at Willard to make sure that the bullets don't come up Jasper Street? I mean, so when you have this drug element down here and you have multi-million-dollar drug organizations and then you allow those sales to continue and just fester in here, and then we expect something different is going to happen, it's not. And so I know I'm getting outside of my zone because I've been in both sides of it, but I sat in the classroom. A classroom, you want to talk about trauma? I sat there with a teacher who was sitting there just in tears, just so thankful that the bullet didn't hit her child. And guess what? It was just me and my colleagues from the police department and others were sitting in that room. No cameras, no attention to the fact that those issues are going on. And so that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis. I've had deaths at the doorstep of my schools. You know what it's like to go to a school and have to sit there and bring the kids around from the other side of the school because sitting in the front lobby of the school entry is someone who's OD'd in the entryway of the school. I mean, so when we talk about trauma, yeah, we can work on all that, but this is not acceptable. We can't have a community down here and being overrun in the way it is and then expect a school that we're standing in today can only bring 100 students in here because they won't come. And so we have a lot of work to do. And so we've been dedicating our Safe Path program into this space where we make sure that we have a school safety officer here. I have men and women working overnight to push around the buildings to make sure that when the kids come in the morning, that they can walk through and not see all of the activities. We have building engineers who are out there walking around picking up needles. That's just not normal. And we gotta, I hear the cry, but just like many of the folks have been here before, something definitely has to demonstrably change, or we're never going to make any inroads. But we're prepared. I never thought I'd be a chief for school safety sitting in the school district dealing with the issues I deal with for my schools down here. I never, ever thought that teachers, there's no one who's prepared these teachers and these school leaders for this. And when I sit in a classroom and a young boy's talking about how he walks through and he has all the language of the street, the fiends, and he said, I've got a child who's in 3rd grade talking about fiends. Oh, I mean, we got a lot of work to do. We're going to continue to dedicate our work, but we do need to support, particularly around our Safe Paths, has been my recommendation to council.
How many schools do you consider in this area?
I think it's a total of 11, Councilman. I think it's around 11 schools, but not all of them. Some are in the peripheral, but it's around 11 schools that we're focusing on.
Can you tell me of those schools, as of today, how many are in need of teachers? I often hear from teachers who work in the 7th Council District who say to me, Councilwoman, I want to teach. I love children. I want to be here, but I'm afraid to be here. I'm afraid to come to your neighborhood to be able to teach. I know that there is one of the schools in the district that said to me that she has about 7 vacant slots. And so, with just 2 months before school begins, I'm concerned about that, right? Because a lot of our kids are going through the system. We're not teaching them appropriately. And part of it is because we can't keep teachers who are qualified to be able to teach our children because of the public safety issue.
Councilwoman Tomas Hanna, Associate Superintendent for Secondary Schools, formerly Principal at Shepherd, Willard, and Kensington High School. Done my career here for the most part. What you call out, and Councilmember Harity, what you've called out in terms of a clarion call for folks to come and do this work. There are people in this community, in this country, who want to come and do this work. They're not afraid of any of this. Got to pay them. You got to value them when they're in our buildings, because one of the reasons teachers leave Chestnut Hill is because the conditions that are in those buildings, in terms of value, in terms of respect and things of that sort, this is part of why we see folks leave. In this community, we have people who want to be here. The challenge, of course, is everything you've called out. They're afraid. I walked up to Conwell, couldn't believe there's a black wrought iron fence outside of this beautiful building. Those are the types of things we've had to do to be able to sort of give people a sense of safety, false sense of safety, frankly, with all due respect. So I think, and what Dr. Watlington has been very clear about is we've got to pay our educators more, every last one of them. That said, there is something to be said for equitable isn't always equal. And so if you choose to come to Kensington High School, which was divided from one behemoth high school with 1,500 to 1,800 students into 3 smaller schools, that has seemed to work, right? You've got Edison High School has room for 2,200 students. There are 900 students in that building. Strawberry Mansion High School, I know it's not in the Kensington area, but Strawberry Mansion, that district is suffering the same kinds of issues here. And when we attempted to put a school on an entire floor of Mansion, because Mansion has room for 2,500 students and there are 500 students in the building, that could be swing space, right, for schools that are suffering because of asbestos and other issues. The community that was coming in turned it down because they would not send their children to that school. You think if tomorrow we told the parents of Frankfurt High School that their entire building is coming to Edison, you know what would happen? Holy hell to pay. Because of the perception, and not Frankfurt's fault, the perception of this community. And as you said, we're sitting here engaging in this dialogue, and the PD left because in this community, 6 folks got shot. It's real. And so we have to have the foresight to say, prepare yourself to come and do this work. The other piece we're doing is working with students. We just graduated only 9 from our public schools who just received full rides to Temple because they decided to go into teaching. Our job is to offer them a guarantee so that when they come with their certification in whatever area, we give them a job. Now, that's not going to happen tomorrow. Temple stepped up. Other universities need to step up. We also have paraprofessionals from this community who, by the way, are black, brown, look like all of us and speak nuestro idioma, who are paraprofessionals in our buildings who are working toward a degree so that they can teach in our schools as well, because some of the most equipped people in our buildings to keep classrooms under control, guess what? It wasn't Mr. Hanna when he started teaching at Potter Thomas at 6th and Indiana in room 214 in 5th grade. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. You know who it was? It was the paraprofessional who was signed to me, who was from that community, knew those young people, and frankly onboarded me to be able to do this work. So that's a really long, drawn-out answer, right? But we do have vacancies. Our team is working very hard to fill vacancies and to make sure that we fill them with the right people. Because, Councilwoman, with all due respect, and I hear you loud and clear, this isn't for everyone, and I would rather tell people the story of Kensington and be part of the Renaissance so you don't leave third period on a Wednesday and the principal doesn't know about it because you've had it. I'd rather you come in understanding what you're getting into, let me work with you, and we're going to get you through. That said, it's not easy, but there are people who are willing to take the challenge. You're not wrong when you said make it like the Army. This job is a cross between the Peace Corps and the Marine Corps, and we got to be honest about it and not BS people about what this work is. Sorry.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. But can you, and I know that you might not have the numbers for right at the moment, but if you can give us a breakdown of schools.
principals, assistant principals, and clerical staff. Clerical staff too, if we have whatever vacancies we have in those buildings, we will endeavor over the next 2 weeks to get that to you.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
We appreciate your dedication to the young people in this community. We do. Are any other questions for this group?
I just have one more, and that is, you mentioned Frankfurt High School. Some members of the Education Committee are here, Vice Chair Brooks is here, and I don't know if we've been able to receive a very clear plan of what is going to happen in September with all of our students. Vice Chair, have we received that? Because I haven't seen it. I may have missed it. Okay. And so do you all know what the plan is for Frankfurt students?
So I can share with you that we continue to work on the plan. However, the 9th grade class will be housed at Clemente Middle School. The 9th grade group, there is room at Clemente. There is a transportation plan being set up, a feeding plan being set up, a plan. There are 2 schools at Clemente currently, Clemente and the Link, a high school and a middle school. And so we'll have about 290 9th graders coming over to Frankfurt with a full complement of administrators, teachers, climate staff, safety folks, counseling team, so that the entire Frankfurt team that would support the 9th grade will be at Clemente engaging in that space, number one. Number two, and we've also made public that the community there knows that the plan is to look at the side of the Frankfurt High School building that is not impacted by asbestos. There is work being done there to ensure that those young people can go back to that building for September. That is
what grade is that?
That would be 10, 11, and 12, all fit in that building, what's called the new wing, not the old wing that is impacted by asbestos.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Chair recognizes Member Brooks and then Member Johnson.
So my question is, you talked about the Safe Passage program. Is it something already implemented, or is just a vision that you have? And is the focus going to be around some of the schools directly impacted right here in Kensington first? It's like a pilot.
Yeah, so we initiated the program a year ago. We're presently at 11 schools, Councilwoman. But it was really focused after the shootings we were having during the let out, as we were, the kids in the neighborhood are calling it now, addressing the violence that we were having, with Lincoln and Overbrook, Bartram, where the kid was killed right outside. We've now shifted because we think we have and moved to now we use a harm score for our schools, but we put our opiate corridors in a different category, give them a higher weight. So we're down in 3 of the schools now. Conwell, Willard, and Mastbaum. We're going to be moving to Elkins and Casares shortly. After we reprogram some funds, we believe we can actually do 2 more schools in this pocket after school, where we can put community members down. We're able to do Willard and Conwell together because of their bell times. So we shift them from one side to the other when the bells. But we think we can have a little bit more bigger footprint down here.
So is the program using your, I don't know the name of your public state? Resource officers?
No, these are community members. Yeah.
Are they paid? Are they stipended?
Yes, ma'am. So they're paid. We put out an RFP last year. IDE, Institute for the Development of African American Youth, Dr. Lee, so his team won the award. So they're actually hire community members from that specific area. They're paid, I believe, around $15 an hour, maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure the exact dollar, to work in those corridors. We work with the University of Pennsylvania and their injury science unit. With Philadelphia Commission on Crime and Delinquency put out a grant. We were able to get additional $2 million, but that's going to be running through the University of Penn, and they're going to be doing an additional 6 or 7 schools, or maybe I believe 8. And then we have some internal dollars from the federal funds that came in. We were able to use those funds. We also put in a grant for PCCD, for the Commission on Crime and Delinquency, got money from them. Dr. Watkinson, after some of the incidents, put some additional dollars from just the budget dollars to continue this process forward.
So are those programs also coupled with trauma-informed mental health supports for the young people that are impacted or maybe identified as problematic or have experienced, various forms of trauma related to? And what do we need to do to make sure that happens?
I think we're not there. There's no question. I mean, we are bringing individuals in. There is a small training element. We have not given them, we give them some de-escalation training and conflict resolution. We have not moved to the level to what you describe, a more advanced, but I'm more than open to have those conversations around how we can do that.
Point of information. Member Brooks,
No,
we are
you're talking about
we are working with the school district to teach trauma recognition, not only to school teachers, but to parents as well. So that is in the beginning stages. Love to have you there. We've had our Safecarder program for, I'm gonna say 10 years. And it wasn't an original idea. We copied off of somebody else. But it is not perfect, but it does work. And so I would invite all members to on 7 a.m. on Monday mornings, come to our roll call meeting, and you'll hear from the principals that are participating in it. I'm so very thankful that you are doing it.
But just talk to my team, and they believe we can offer them mental health first aid as part of that work. So, and that's be a good training and capture many of the things that you're talking about.
Okay, I just,
No.
just from listening to the community members and just making sure that our young folks, based on the statistics that our public defender shared, we need to make sure that we're giving our young people all the supports that they need. And I think the schools primarily right here in this area that are being impacted by this epidemic, we need to funnel the resources there. And I think we need to, if we need to loop in Dr. Bowman or whoever else to make sure that happens, let's make sure it happens, because
I think I misunderstood your question then, because I thought you were talking about the workers who are along the corridors. It sounds like you may be talking about something different.
So also the workers along the corridors, the community members that are impacted, the young people that are walking through the trauma. So everyone needs to be a part of this process. And I haven't had a chance to look at the Kensington plan, and I'm hoping that it's including more of this in there. But we need to make sure that our young people are protected from this experience, and protection means preventing them from being able to be affected as they get older. And we have to address the trauma immediately. As young as kindergarten, like someone just said that, moving dead bodies off the steps to the school building, like.
They need to know this ain't normal.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Karen Lynch, Chief of Student Support Services, for the record. We have trauma-informed care supports in every single one of our schools, K to 12, for our students, and they're age appropriate. We have social emotional learning supports. We have trained people within our schools to be able to recognize when a child comes into the school one way on a day and a different way on another day that perhaps something has happened. We have circles, community circles within our schools. You can go into our kindergarten classes and you can see our young people sitting in a circle and engaging with one another and developing relationships. You see the same type of experience that's happening K to 12 in all of our schools. The School District of Philadelphia is now a licensed provider of behavioral health services. We are partnering with CBH. We are a provider for their service. It is a partnership that has grown over the last 10 years, and now the sustainability of the service is there because we're licensed, and CBH recognizes that licensure and pays us for the services that we are providing. CBH is also putting intensive behavioral health supports in every single one of our schools. That is intended to be able to serve a child within the school, the same provider within the home, the same provider within the community, and those services are appropriate, linguistically and culturally appropriate. So if the community is primarily Spanish speaking, for example, that's the service provider that's going to be in the school with those services. I'm going to say one more thing because I know time.
We recognize that it's important for our teachers, our school-based staff to be trained, as well as for our children to receive trauma-informed services. We have engaged in our healing-centered engagement, which is a new initiative this year. We have 15 schools, actually no, we have 17 schools that are participating. Thank you, Councilman Jones, because we identified 2 more when we met with you that are participating in this effort. And we've just ended Camp Achille, where children in our community who have experienced trauma have the opportunity to engage in a trauma-informed care experience of camping to help deal with their trauma, address their trauma. Throughout the school year, we're going to have training for our teachers and our school-based staff. I'm only giving you a small snippet, but it is an environment of trauma-informed care. We recognize that our schools are buildings where there should be safe havens, and children should know that once they get there, they're going to be safe. And on the way to and from, they're going to be safe.
And just to be sure that I heard this, are we making sure we have additional resources in the schools in this particular area that are impacted by this epidemic?
We can share with you, I can't do it tonight, we can share with you the additional resources that are provided within this area for the children and the schools that are experiencing challenges. Say, for example, at this particular building, we have van service, we have bus service that are bringing the children here because of the circumstances within the community. So that's just an example.
I think what the member and Member Lozada are talking about is that there's a commitment within the Kensington plan to intensify that kind of good work that you do. Yes? There you go.
Yes.
Guys, it's 9:20? Oh, thank you. So it's 9:20, and we do have 3 members of the community that have been so patient. If it's the will of this panel, I'd like to hear from. All right, who do we have, Mr. Cohen?
I believe Benita Cummings was first, but I believe she has left. I know Sonia Bingham has already spoken. And is there Lisa Monique Jenkins Hayden still present? That's all, Mr.
Going
Chairman.
once? Yes. Come on down, state your name for the record. We're going to do right by the janitor and maintenance people in this building because we promised them we'd be out of here 20 minutes ago.
It's not that important.
Okay. No, it is important. You were patient.
These guys, I don't know what his name is, but there's a person that's doing the safety corridor program for this neighborhood. I believe his name was Mike. I'm not sure. He's an older white dude. He's awesome. He gave me his card. He walked through a house that was abandoned and a bunch of the attics were inside that was right next to Willard, and went through the house with me, cleared the house, helped me to seal the house up because it was directly next to the school. And he's been actively talking to every community, or to the crossing guard, who, if you're a kid who grew up in Philly, the crossing guards, you knew them, you grew up with them, and they're extremely important to you. They know you growing your whole childhood. And I've seen this guy specifically do a really good job. I don't remember his exact name. I could find, I have my phone died. I'll take an email or something. But I just want to say that, I've seen active, because you were asking about participation in, positive community, or, I watched him talk to someone who was addicted and talk to them with experience from his own addiction and be trauma-informed and be, consistent in his effort, even though the person was getting aggressive with him, while still being able to talk to kids and move things through the community. And I just want to say that program, if there's a way to find more funding through this, has been extremely helpful for me because I live a half a block away and I see all the shit that goes on here, and thanks.
Thank you so much for that comment. So this committee, the Committee on Public Safety, will stand at recess to the call of the chair to deal with resolutions number 320120 and 320121. Thank you. 230121. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, sir.